Hello, everyone. We're almost ready to begin.
I don't know. What's the pass?
9770. 9770. 97. Oh. Okay, everyone, please go ahead and take your seats. We're going to begin this meeting of the Parks, Recreation, Community Services Commission. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Howie Jacobowitz, would you please lead us in, I'm sorry. Oh, whoops, roll call. Oh, it's not there. Am I on the right one? Oops. Okay, may we please have roll call?
Commissioner Peters,
Here.
Commissioner Mohammed,
Here.
Commissioner Bond,
Here.
Vice Chair Alexander,
Here.
Chair Leonard.
Here.
Everyone is present.
Okay. My screen shows Pledge of Allegiance next. Is that correct?
That would be correct.
Please stand, and Howie Jacobowitz will lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. And next is public comment for items not on the agenda. Do we have any comments?
Computer. No, you do not have any not on the agenda.
Okay, thank you. Next is receipt of correspondence.
You received 2 e-comments and 1 email concerning the agenda, and you were emailed them at 4 o'clock today.
Thank you.
So I just need a vote of a receive and file of those documents.
Can we have a motion to receive and file? Looks like we have that, and we need a second. Okay.
So I have a motion by Commissioner Bonds. I'm sorry, I have a motion by Vice Chair Alexander, seconded by Commissioner Bond, to receive and file the receipt of correspondence. And you may start voting. And the votes are in, and that passes unanimously.
Thank you. We have no consent calendar items. We have one primary item on the agenda, so we don't need to reorder anything. And it just disappeared on me. All right. Hold on just a minute, please. My screen just blacked. Here it is. Hold on a minute, please.
Speakers.
Okay. So we now have before us item A1, which is the consideration of various complaints the Parks, Recreation, and Community Services Commission has received regarding racket sports and courts in Culver City. We also have item 2, approval of recommendations to city staff or city council in response to the complaints. 3, consideration of forming a PRCS Commission racket sports ad hoc subcommittee to complete a specific task. And 4, if desired, to appoint 2 PRCS Commission members to the newly formed ad hoc subcommittee. We will receive a brief staff report and then take items from the public.
Thank you, Chair Leonard, and Vice Chair and Commissioners. We thank you for holding this special meeting tonight. We know this is a very important topic. As you can see, we have, it's well represented. We did a lot of marketing to get the word out to as many people as we could that could possibly be affected by this. So my name is Ted Stevens, Director of Parks, Recreation, Community Services, and I'll give you a brief staff report. Everyone has a copy. It was posted online. The background section, I won't get into too much. I know it was brought forth at our last meeting. So I'm going to move along a little bit. But just for folks of everyone here, at the June 7th meeting in 2022, PRCS Commission meeting, members of the public addressed the commission about the popularity of the game pickleball and requested that an agendized discussion be added to an upcoming meeting. A consensus was reached and the item appeared on the agenda of September 6, 2022. The PRCS Commission meeting during which a pickleball court implementation feasibility study ad hoc subcommittee was created. The specific ad hoc subcommittee was tasked to work with staff to create a survey for the users for the racket sports courts in order to gain insight from the community on how these courts can serve Culver City moving forward. So this survey was conducted and we got responses from 864 people, which is quite a few. And you can see the total number of responses. It's all broken down in the report. There were 5 questions that were asked, and the results are provided in the report. For the sake of time, we can reference these or touch on them if it comes up during the meeting, but I'll move along for the sake of time. I know we're going to have a lot of speakers tonight. So at the April 2nd, 2024 PRCS Commission meeting, public comment was made by various residents near the Alinda Street paddle tennis courts, and the comments included issues regarding noise, foul language, fighting, public urination. These comments were referenced at the May 7th, 2024 PRCS Commission meeting by Vice Chair Leonard when she recommended forming an ad hoc subcommittee to focus on met to agendize a discussion about racket sport courts. The discussion continued at the June 4th meeting when commissioners questioned how to focus the agendized discussion during the agenda item A5. On July 2nd, 2024, the PRCS Commission at their regular meeting considered ways to hear and address complaints concerning the racket sports courts in Culver City. At that time, the PRCS commissioners agreed to hold a special meeting, and that's where we are here tonight. So based on the complaints received to date, the PRCS Commission can consider recommendations within the following categories. Recommendations regarding court modifications. Should Culver City consider dual stripes on its tennis courts? Should Culver City consider dual stripes on its basketball courts? Should the PRCS Commission reconsider its previous recommendation to dual stripe paddle tennis courts for pickleball use? Should Culver City install sound mitigation panels on some of its racket sports courts? Times of usage. Should Culver City consider changing the times of usage of its rackets courts? Should Culver City limit the times pickleball can be played on courts near residents' houses? Operational strategies. Should Culver City utilize a reservation system for its racket courts? Should Culver City charge an individual to reserve a racket court? These are a sample of discussion points for each category. Different recommendations could come out of other talking points or from newer complaints received by the PRCS Commission. So you're not limited to these. You have broader. These are just some examples. In preparation for this special meeting, the PRCS staff reached out directly to various cities in LA County and through the California Parks and Recreation Society, the entire state. The goal is to give a rough picture of how other cities and the surrounding area and statewide oversee and run their racket courts. Staff focused on asking questions concerning the types of racket courts in each city, if they had tried dual striping their courts, if they had received any noise complaints, and how did they handle the noise complaints. The cities that responded included Belmont, Beverly Hills, Fountain Valley, Gardena, Hawthorne, Irvine, Laguna Beach, Long Beach, which I can speak in more detail on, Los Angeles, Manhattan Beach, Mission Viejo, Redondo Beach, San Luis Obispo, Santa Monica, Tustin, West Hollywood, and Yorba Linda. Attachment 3 lists the responses from each city. And I believe for now, so I do want to mention that there is a capital improvement project account dedicated to resurfacing and restriping courts. Funds for the CIP is allocated from Culver City's Park Facilities Quimby Fund, and the CIP is dedicated to striping, resurfacing, and restriping sport courts at all Culver City parks for sports that include tennis, paddle tennis, handball, and basketball. There is a second CIP account for the fiscal year 24-25 budget that contains $150,000 dedicated to soundproofing specific paddle tennis courts. And that concludes my report for now.
Thank you very much. So now we'll hear from the public. I know a lot of people are very anxious to speak. So first of all, thank you all for coming and sharing your perspectives and your experiences on this topic. Adam, could you please explain that about the seating of time and how many comments, public comments do we have on the item?
Yes, so currently you have 20 people signed up to speak.
Okay.
And as a reminder, if you are planning on seating your time, we can only allow time to be seated to one individual by one person. So 2 people cannot cede their time to the same individual.
Okay, thank you. So we'll allot 3 minutes per person, and we'll go ahead and get started on that. Thank you.
So I'm gonna call out the first 5 people, and then I'll update as we move along. So the first 5 people are Patty Mitsugana, Howie Jacobowitz, John Wallert, Dinah Wallert, and Barry Goldstein. So Patty Mitsugana.
Hi, I'm Patty Mitsunaga, and I'd like to give up my time to Howie.
So Patty is ceding her time to Howie Jacobowitz. Howie Jacobowitz.
Hi, everybody. I'm Howie Jacobowitz, longtime Culver City resident. I love our parks. I've played paddle tennis and now pickleball for over 20 years. I addressed the commission in the June meeting talking about how I think we can best allocate court space to handle the 3 somewhat competing communities of tennis, pickleball, and paddle tennis. Since that meeting, I realized that we have another thing to deal with, and that is the undue burden that so many neighbors around the paddle, tennis, pickleball courts are feeling, and that has to be addressed, in my opinion. So I prepared a draft. I sent it to all of you and to you too, Ted. Hopefully you've seen it. And I'm going to talk about that. And before I do, I want to thank the whoever produced those attachments to the agenda. The attachment number 2, which at the bottom has the 4 overlaid courts on a tennis court, I believe that's the answer to our problems. And I'll explain why in my draft now. So I broke it out into a short run, medium range plans, and long run. I want to focus mostly on the short run because time is wasted. So my idea is this. You take the 2 tennis courts at Veterans Park and you dual stripe them and you create 8 pickleball courts. That can handle 32 people playing. At the same time, as soon as that's done, you take the courts at Culver and Alenda and you return that to the way it used to be, paddle tennis. And so that's something that can be done at minimal cost, can be done almost immediately, and you've really helped, you've done a few things. So here's the pros and the cons. The pro is the sound issue that so many neighbors have complained about has been dealt with. You've increased the supply of courts so that the congestion problem, which aggravates particularly the paddle tennis and pickleball players, you've dealt with. and the cons. The cons are, what about the tennis community? Does this all fall on the back of the tennis community? Well, yes and no. The courts are being, I would say, should be dual stripe, so they'll be shared, just like the other courts have been shared for years now. But more importantly, if you do that, any tennis player that is displaced, just a couple blocks away is the high school where there is a joint use agreement during non-school hours. And non-school hours are the only time when there's a congestion problem, so nobody has to not play. So the pros are many. The sound issue is really handled. The supply of courts is enlarged because you have the multiplier effect of the 4 courts on the one. And so what are the cons? Well, to a certain extent, you could argue that we just moved the problem from Culver Lenda to 2 blocks over, but that's not really a fair argument, and I'll try to give you 3 reasons why I don't think it is. It's not a fair argument because, one, those houses are further away than the Culver Lenda houses are, which I think are only 15 feet away. Second, the courts, before you go from the courts to the houses, you have a basketball set of courts that frankly can be quite raucous. And while there are not lights on the basketball court, that doesn't mean they don't play at night. They do. They use the lights from the tennis court, and they're there till late at night. I've driven by a number of times and seen it. So that's my suggestion for the short run. I also have mid-range and longer run. So hopefully I get through a lot of this. So for the mid-range solution, the goal should be to address the disparity in available space for pickleball players vis-a-vis tennis players. As I said last month, there are more than 50% more pickleball players today than there are tennis players. Tennis isn't dying, but it isn't growing, and pickleball is the fastest growing sport in the country, and it has been the case for many years now. And I think that needs to be addressed. So my mid-range solution is this: look to replace other dual-use paddle tennis courts that are very close to homes, such as the courts at Culver West and Sid Cronenthal, by changing these back to paddle tennis only. At the same time, look to dual stripe more of the tennis courts. I'm thinking of the Lindbergh Park court, which seems to be a little less utilized than the others. And also I would look to Fox Hills. And speaking of Fox Hills, for my longer range idea, it's this. I've got a minute left. It is make that sort of a pickleball center where you could convert all the courts to pickleball. And I picked that because there's a chance for such a large supply there. It's very far from any homes, separated by a major boulevard. And you could have up to 16 courts created, 64 people playing, and that's really something. And that's not that different than a lot of other communities already have. So it's not something that's an unreasonable expectation. That's exactly, by the way, what Westchester has now. They have, I forgot how many courts they have, but they have addressed with hybrid courts at the Westchester Park there. I'm blanking on the number, but a lot of court space. So that's a bigger deal because, can I finish? Okay, the sentence. Thank you very much for your time.
Your sentence, please.
All right.
Thank you.
John Waller.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for putting this on your agenda, Commissioners. I'm John Whalert, a 30-year resident on Wagner Street, 250 feet from the paddle tennis courts. We've met with Ted and his group to try and address some of the issues that we've been experiencing. This is a new phenomenon for the paddle tennis courts. It really accelerated during COVID when people were looking for some way to get out of the house, do something, and pickleball on the paddle tennis courts exploded. The noise, and Howie, I appreciate you addressing that, is nonstop. It starts at sunrise and it doesn't finish until sunset, Monday through Sunday, every single day. That's one of our biggest concerns. We had asked Parks and Rec staff to post some signage, maybe some increased security for the area. There are no facilities in this area. There are no bathrooms. The courts are really unsupervised. Nobody pays attention to them. They're supposed to be locked. They're not locked. So we went through this process, and again, we're not against paddle tennis. We're against the noise that it's producing, and I believe there are probably some long-term plans that could resolve that. The thing I'm disappointed about is we've asked for some very simple things. Post some hours, post some, common rules. On our books, we have rules in this city about offensive noise and behavior. No interfering with city employees, volunteers. Our city employees have been harassed by people playing paddle tennis. The courts have been vandalized by people playing pickleball, sorry. And there's also a no excessive noise and offensive behavior rules already on our books. We asked that this stuff be posted, and we got a sign that basically said, no red dye 40 on our courts. That was one of the rules that was written into this. Nowhere in there was there time or rules of behavior, any of that stuff. We would like something done about this. We'd like it done sooner than later. I know there are lots of short-term, long-term, mid-term goals, but in the very short term, this has come on us within a very short period of time, and we'd like it to get resolved also in a very short period of time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dinah Whaler? Not here, okay. So the next 5 I'll have are Barry Goldstein, Yael White, Tom Wilson, Paula Wilson, and Steve Rowe, and Meg Sullivan. So Barry Goldstein.
Good evening, Chairperson and Commissioners. I would just like to strike a tone of collaboration and conciliation here, which I know we've spoken about and was spoken about at the last meeting, in that, and again, I'm sure you'll hear it over and over tonight, that the nearby residents, of which I'm one, are not against either paddleball or pickleball, and nor do I think any of the players are pro-obnoxious noise. These are not really oppositional 180-degree elements. What we're all looking for is a way that we can share in the pleasure of the courts and not pay the penalty for it. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I spoke a bit about decibels at the last meeting. I just want to talk about the sympathetic nervous system today, and I've been doing some research on the actual quality of the sound of pickleball mostly, but paddle tennis also follows this to some degree. What makes the pickleball sound particularly difficult to deal with is that it is both percussive, impulsive, and persistent. And I'll just give brief definitions of some of those things. Impulsive is the fact that the sound is much higher at the beginning of its duration. So it pops, everyone knows that, it pops, and then it fades quickly, which makes it both hard to measure and hard to tolerate. It's persistent because of the length of time. It's impulsive in that you don't know when to expect it. It's not like marching band music that's playing. So all these things combined are perfect triggers for stress-inducing hormones in the human body, and also the endocrine system being challenged, because they're not noises that sound mechanical or animal. They're noises that are akin to someone tapping on a window. The same sound, the same volume of noise has different qualities depending on its nature. And pickleball has all the characteristics of one that is both highly stressful, difficult to manage, stress-inducing, and producing a high degree of anxiousness. Now, this is probably not as serious when you're playing for an hour, half hour, as it is when you're working 15 or 16 feet away from that sound. And the play has begun at 8 and finishes at 10. The average pickleball sound varies somewhere around 55 decibels. And I just want to remind us that it doesn't take too far away to get from that, before the sound diminishes greatly, because sound is inverse square in that if you double the distance between you and the sound, it squares the degree to which it's diminished. So if you go twice as far away, it's times 4 reduction, and so on and so forth. If you go 4 times away, it's 16 times, it's a square. And so this just makes it particularly perverse that we are so close to the tennis courts, when as you look through the appendices and other research, most court cases that are happening across the country are somewhere in the hundreds of feet away. And the other characteristic is which I'll stop with, is the nature of the surfaces, which are all concrete and thus amplifying and echoing the sound as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. Okay, thank you, Barry. It's my husband. I too want to echo, we want collaboration. We don't want to cease playing. I just personally, sorry, my name's Yael. I spoke last time briefly and a little bit selfishly in that I can't have people starting play at 6:30 in the morning and going past 10. It's not fair. I feel like I'm monitoring the courts. The ball bounces basically in my ear because our bedroom window is right on top of the courts. I don't think it's regular people. Generally, people who play regularly are aware that it's 8 to 10. If we could shorten those hours on either end, I would be greatly appreciative. I don't think people understand that when they play music on the courts, they don't understand how it sounds in my bedroom or anywhere in my house, because the sound, all those things that Barry explained. But it's constant throughout the day. So if someone's playing music, generally they're kind when I ask them to turn it down. And sometimes I have more tolerance than other days, but sometimes I just don't. And it's just persistent, and it's every day. There's really no break from it. Yes, just this weekend, someone started playing at 7:30 in the morning. They're like, "Oh, I didn't realize there was time." So obviously, they're not regular people who play, but that is my ask: is that we can really enforce. If we're going to change the hours, which would be lovely, or if we could really confine the hours and have them be observed, and have me not be the police person of it because it's too loud or waking us up or not letting us go to sleep. We have young kids at home. They go to sleep early-ish. Anyway, that's my ask. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Tom Wilson.
Hello. As you know, my wife and I live directly behind the Olinda Paddle Court tennis courts. And when we moved there 37 years ago, there weren't a lot of people playing. But it grew. Paddle tennis grew like crazy, and soon we had a lot more people than we had courts to handle. There was good lines all the time. But then came COVID and pickleball, and now we have 2 to 3 times as many people as we have courts. Because of this, people have to do other things, such as start coming at 6:30 in the morning by cutting the fences out, by cutting the locks off, or just walking in because they're not getting locked in the first place. So now we have people playing at all hours of the day, well into the night, even playing by car light, headlights. And we have to listen to the fuck, fuck, fuck all day long and well into the night. It's enough to drive you crazy, I have to admit. But these are also really active games. In addition to the sound of the balls, there's a lot of yelling, a lot of screaming, a lot of swearing. And that swearing often includes a ball flying over the fence into our yard. And this isn't just a bad shot. This is a ball going the length of a paddle tennis court, over a 15-foot fence, over a 15-foot alley, and over our 10-foot wall. That's not just a missed shot. That's somebody doing that on purpose, and that's not right. It really isn't right. Really, we don't, as has been said before, we are not objecting to the games. We're objecting to the location. And I Also, I like Howie's ideas, but I would also suggest we do not do that, move the games down to Veterans Park, because all we're doing is annoying the people at the other end of our block instead of us. We're trying to stop these games from annoying all the neighbors. So all we're asking is we get more courts and they be placed in a location far away from the neighbors. And that can be Botts Field or Fox, anything you want, but just be sure to consider the neighbors when we look at where we place these games. Thank you.
Thank you.
Paula Wilson.
Hi again, everybody. How are you? I'm Paula. And last time, I spent much of my time playing a video of the actual sound that we hear. I'm not going to show, I probably should, show a lot of the people in this room, because I don't think that the people playing this game, that I have none of us, I love the fact that the neighborhood, the community is getting physical activity. I do think that what has happened to those courts behind us is exponential to what it was meant for, and we are suffering from it. And no one, I hear a lot of paddle tennis people say, but you know, it's not that bad. Well, you really don't understand, as I think Barry did put it quite well, it can kind of drive you insane from 8 in the morning or 7:30 or whenever somebody gets there until 10 p.m. at night. When I'm not feeling well, I can't go to sleep because we're also not talking about the physicality and the noise that comes with that, both verbally and by the ball, which is like having it in our house. It's like having 10 people screaming in our house playing ball, because that's how loud it is. And on Sunday morning, I remember walking out into my backyard and thinking, oh my gosh, nobody's here. It's so quiet. And then I did hear paddle tennis, but it had been so long that I had only heard paddle tennis that it almost seemed quiet, it almost seemed like silence. That's how loud pickleball is. It's constant, it's unnerving, and it makes me want to move my everything because I can't work in that kind of environment. And I know it's just our street, but from the LA Times it says soundproof barriers, go-to solution, but they're not even proving that it dampens the noise that much. And the only thing that truly is working is moving it far away from human life. That's a quote from the LA Times. And it's the only surefire solution. And many are slow to reach that conclusion, and that presents its own hurdles. But I just really, really think that Culver City needs to really think about moving these courts to a Bill Botts or a place that is not close to humans.
Thank you.
Steve Rowe. Steve Rowe is ceding his time to Meg Sullivan.
Hi, good evening. I don't play any racket sports, but I do know of an unused spot in the Arts District where there's room for up to 3 pickleball courts. And I'm here to respectfully request that the city investigate the possibility, which could help meet some of the demand. I brought some slides to illustrate the idea. The area is under the overpass of the Expo or E-Line train as it approaches Culver City from the east. The idea preserves the easternmost bay, which is what you see here, for access to the Hayden track, but turns the middle 2 bays into courts. Next slide, please. This could be accomplished by leveling the site's minimal grade, installing courts, and enclosing them with chain link drop from the overpass to the ground. Next slide, please. The precise location is where Wesley Street meets the bike path parallel to National Boulevard near the platform. It is 150 feet from the nearest housing, which is the recommended buffer. Next slide, please. Based on the sport's accepted dimensions, the second bay from the east could easily accommodate 2 courts, and the third could accommodate another. Next slide, please. The idea is consistent with a growing trend to take advantage of land under overpasses for sports activities in communities that lack land that has not been developed but is still in public control. This, by the way, is Metro land, but it's under the city's control. Platform across National from the site offers a relevant precedent. The parklet there is installed under the same overpass and is very successful. The overpass there actually offers welcome shade. The same MOU with Metro could be written to embrace this unimproved site. Next slide, please. The chain link appearance could be softened by threading plastic slats through it. This low-cost solution is used along freeways in Houston. A range of pickleball players that I've shown this to have received the idea enthusiastically. One raised the concern, though, whether the height of the space is adequate. That's something that can be determined with specifications and tools that I do not possess. I also have shown it to some officials. The lack of street parking is the most common objection they have raised. However, the site is easily accessed by bike, bus, and train, and paid parking is available at the train station and platform, both of which are just a little over a block away. The second concern that I've heard is sound. Whether the courts would generate more noise than already present at the site is doubtful, but could easily be determined. Sound studies were conducted there in 2012 or 2013. Those results could be compared to levels known to be generated by the sport. And obviously, if it were built from the ground up, an automatic locking device could be installed so that
The next 5 are Steve Mitsunaga, Eric Horsack, David Van Slyke, Jay Corey, and Taylor Park.
Commissioners, Ted Stevens, thanks for having me here. Basically, I represent, I think, pickleball players, paddle tennis players, and tennis players. I played all 3 sports, and they're great sports. My wife and I moved into Culver City specifically because of the paddle tennis courts and also all the parks in the area. And we've been here for well over 30 years. And we love Culver City. Of course, most recently, we have experienced this boom in pickleball. And I have to admit, I play, okay? I think I do it pretty good. And I invited all of you folks out there, I guess it was like over almost a year and a half ago, to come out and see what's going on. But anyway, aside from that, I've been listening to everybody, talking to a lot of people, and I was trying to get to one conclusion maybe that would like kind of solve everything, right? And I think what's causing all the problems, and I hate to do this and say this, but I think the commissioners here, Park and Recreation, and everybody, you guys have been sitting on your hands and you haven't been doing anything, okay? And it's caused a lot of unrest. And so I think there's a real simple answer, and hopefully you guys have it. And I think both communities, and actually not both, but all the communities, tennis, paddle tennis, pickleball, and even the neighbors, right, probably start working together in unity if the commissioners, you folks right up there, would tell us tonight, maybe even take it to a vote, and tell us if you guys are planning on adopting pickleball at all in this city. Because if you are not, right, it's real simple. Pickleball disappears. We all start going to neighboring communities, which we're doing already, and actually paying to play. Yeah, I urge you to listen to that. We're paying to play in other communities. We're leaving this community, right? And you guys have to start looking within yourselves and task yourself with that simple decision. Do you want to adopt pickleball here? And it's a real simple decision, and I don't know why you can't take it to a vote tonight and show us all what your intent is. I think that's a fair thing to ask. And then the other thing is, I love Megan Sullivan's proposals. She found land, because I know that money and land was at a, there's not much of it available right now. And her proposal is great. I like the idea that possibly we move pickleball from Alinda Court, and because that's why I came here, okay, to Culver City. And it is overcrowded right now with pickleball and maybe not so much paddle tennis players, but there's a rhythm to play out there. To move it to tennis courts, Megan found a solution under the Metro line. I think it's all great stuff. We saw a proposal to build out Bill Botts Field, and I think that was a great idea too. But I think we may have to get to a pay-to-play situation
That's your time.
and a revenue generation for the city. All right.
Thank you.
Eric Korsak?
Good evening. I'd like to see my time to David Van Slyke.
David Van Slyke. David Van Slyke?
Hello, Commissioners. My name is David Van Slyke, longtime Culver City resident. I want to echo the aspirational plan to put pickleball up on Bill Botts Field, but right now, me and Steve and several other Culver City residents have been working with the Commission Parks and Rec for 3 years, trying to get signs put up that gave us the right to play pickleball at the Culver City courts, and I'm grateful to Ted Stevens for getting those signs up there. It does expressly say that pickleball is allowed, which it took us 3 years to get, but we appreciate that. I wanted to start off by saying some of my professional duties is I'm a sound engineer mixing movies and television. I have 9 Emmy nominations, 1 win. I have 17 Golden Reel nominations, 2 wins. I was on the Academy Award winning team for Bram Stoker's Dracula when I worked at Sony. I built many studios with soundproofing, and I'm very aware of the way sound works, directionality, pitch, and some of the neighbors have commented, and I can agree with what they're saying. I wanted to start with a solution, and then maybe I can say a few more things. I think paddle, pickle, and the neighbors can all get along in Culver City, but the city has to do proper sound mitigation of whatever court they decide is right for pickleball. We happen to like Alinda. As Howie said, if we go to Vets Park, you're going to have complaints from the Vets neighbors about pickleball. It is a more piercing sound, a more percussive sound, but it's not completely different than paddle tennis. So if the city does proper sound mitigation on all sides, and then if some of the neighbors would also do better sound mitigation on their alleyway, if they want to mitigate the sound, I think that would be really helpful. I guess they have a right to be in their homes with their windows open at 8 in the morning, listening to the sounds of the city. I've measured the sound of the city, and it's 60 decibels. The traffic on Culver City Boulevard is 60 decibels, and pickleball decibel level is a little bit higher than that. Paddle tennis seems to me to be louder than pickleball, but it's a different frequency, and I understand the annoyance of the pickleball thwap. So if both things were done, I think we could live in unity and everybody could get along and play. I think it's aspirational to put pickleball on the hillside. I was at the meetings where Vets Park was planned, and it's a great plan. I think that solves everything for pickle, paddle, and the neighbors. But until that time, we have to come up with some of the solution. So the other point I wanted to make is that the sound of paddle tennis is, if you actually go measure it, and I'm sure the Parks and Rec people have done their due diligence and found out how often these courts are used. They're often empty, so they're not used 12 hours a day, 14 hours a day. There's gaps in the day when they're not used, but if people are home all the time with their windows open, then it's going to seem like it's happening a lot. This is Sunday. So you hear the sound of the traffic and then occasionally the sound of paddle tennis. And it's measuring about 65, 70 decibels. But that's two paddle tennis games going on at the same time. And yes, you have exuberant voices as it is an athletic park. Okay. So I think the dual solution of sound mitigation and neighbors mitigating their fences, so you have two walls between where the sound starts and where you are listening to the sound, would be the best solution there is. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Jay Corey?
Good evening, folks. I was actually going to cede my time to Howie, but I can't do that. So you get to listen to my Boston accent for about 2 minutes and 53 seconds. First and foremost, I got to say, I think I was part of the group that started coming out here a couple of years ago and trying to get some lines put on courts and so forth and so on. And so as I began to play the sport of pickleball, and I really found out this evening that, my dear friend John, to my left, one of my close friends, I hear the plight. I want you to know that. I got to tell you, if I was, listening to that noise and in not playing the sport and so forth, I think I'd really have a lot of compassion. And I will admit, until this evening, I did not. So I do now. And I just want to say that to the neighbors that are dealing with noise. We hear dogs barking, and that can drive us crazy. We hear all kinds of things that we feel we shouldn't be exposed to. And we have a right to some peace and quiet and hear the birds chirping and different things. And pickleball is no different. So to our neighbors that are experiencing this, I just want to say that if we have been a little bit benign to that, I would like to say on our behalf, we apologize for that as pickleball players, sincerely. That said, we got a problem. NASA, we got a problem. The problem is pickleball is booming. And, I have some younger people here tonight that are learning the sport that are just bringing a lot of energy to it. And they're coming out from work, and it's a corporate thing now. And people are coming out after work, and they're doing it as part of, their social functions. And we're going to have to solve it. And I think one thing about leadership as a business owner, I make decisions daily, and they don't always make people happy. And I know I'm not preaching to the choir, because you folks have a very difficult job, and I recognize that. You get hit from all ends and all angles, and people think you can snap your fingers, but you're ultimately going to make decisions that are going to make some people unhappy. Could be us, but I think the point is that decisions will need to be made, right? We can't keep coming here and, we'll deal with it. We'll live with it. We're big boys and girls, and we'll move on. So appreciate what you do. Appreciate you do not have an easy path forward on this. And once again, to our neighbors that have experienced this noise, our deepest apologies. I'm probably one of those guys out there that you may hear, on occasion, not using nicest language, but I'll try to get better at that. In any event, thank you so much, and I appreciate all you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next five are Taylor Park, Andrea Edwards, Kei Yamamoto, Don Seymour, and Josh Oswald. Taylor Park?
Hi, it's actually Tyler Park. I don't know how it got misspelled. So I guess I'd be part of the younger pickleball group that's kind of coming up into these courts. I think the courts are really special, and it brings a very wide range of people from different ethnic backgrounds, different careers, different ages, and I think it's really special, something really special that I feel really happy to be a part of and get to go out and do and play with them almost on every given day. I do feel for the neighbors. I do think there needs to be some sort of adoption to kind of meet both sides, but I think as the sport is growing, that it should be really taken seriously. I think the tennis, adopting the tennis courts is a great option. I come from a tennis background. I played juniors. I played collegiately. I played even some low-level pro tennis. Tennis has never been a super popular sport in a public park, from my experience. I think there's room for it to exist there and for both sides, tennis and pickleball, to share those courts, but I think there's other options that should be explored. And I think what these courts have kind of created can keep building and bring in more people from different backgrounds from all over the city together that is doing now, and I think that should really be considered. Thanks.
Thank you.
Andrea Edwards? Andrea, are you online? Andrea Edwards, are you in chambers?
Andrea Edwards.
Moving on to Kei Yamamoto.
Hi, I'm Kay, and I'm a pickleball player. And I think no one has addressed yet that many lawsuits are going on across the country about the sound that pickleball makes. And so there are new technologies that I don't think anyone's addressed, and the balls in the city of Ojai, where there were a couple of lawsuits regarding the sound. The courts are located right across the street from residences. So the new technologies are reduce the sound by 50%. And so that could be an option for the courts that are located near residences. And I think the technologies are just getting better, because I read about it in the news all the time, that there are these new 3D printed balls that are reducing the sound even further. So I think it's not a black and white issue. It is something that, pickleball is growing so much and has done a lot for young people and old people, and, people of all ages. I've even seen people in wheelchairs playing, and it just brings so much joy and positivity and community to their lives, because it's not that hard of a sport to learn, to pick up. It is very difficult to master, and that's what makes it so, I guess, addictive, and that's why people don't really want to give it up. And it is the fastest growing sport, and it's growing around the world. And that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Don Seymour?
Hello, everybody. My name is Don. I'm a tennis player. I have a meetup group with over 250 tennis players, and I tried paddle tennis, and it doesn't spoil my paddle tennis doesn't spoil my tennis game at all. And I play at Elinda and Culver, and I would say like the paddle tennis would be like the home team, and maybe the pickleball would be like the visitors. And you know how the home team usually respects their area. The visitors sometimes could be maybe seen like a rock band thrashing a hotel. You don't know, yeah. But so I've seen a lot of the busyness between the pickleballers and the paddle tennis, and the idea about the Bill Botch field, that sounds like a good idea. Maybe bring the pickleballers there, or get some area of grass in one of the parks in Culver City away from the neighbors, and maybe make it like a grassroots semi-type of situation where some volunteers who play pickleball could help out with construction, where the city doesn't need to be gouged by very high prices of construction. You could have volunteers on the pickleball side that could help, and just take a small area of grass away from the neighbors, build 6 or 8, 10 pickleball courts, and it wouldn't take up that much space. It wouldn't cost that much with the help of the volunteers. And also, I think that the pickleball and the paddle tennis should have their own courts, because, by the way, also a couple days ago, I played tennis at Penmar, and we had to sign up, and all the courts were full. So I don't believe tennis courts should be eliminated to make pickleball courts. The tennis population is still thriving. I see it all the time. I even stopped the meetup attendance. We're texting each other now because it's been too busy with all the people trying to play tennis now. So we're just texting each other rather than having my meetup active, even though I'm still paying for it. But I think they should have their separate courts. Tennis has their courts, paddle tennis have their courts. Why can't they build pickleball courts? That's all I ask, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Josh Oswald.
Thank you guys for allowing me to speak. I currently operate a tennis pickleball facility management program, City of West Hollywood. You guys, I'm familiar with Culver City. I was a paddle tennis player myself. I was ranked number 2 in the world when I was playing. I was a national champion tennis player 5 times. I coached some of the leading pickleball players in the world, and play at a high level. I've been a player. I worked at Tennis Channel for years as well. And, you know, the big thing is that there's a lot of problems that have floated around here. You have a complex set of problems. There's a lot of solutions that I've heard. You know, I've spent the last 3.5, 4 years solving all of those problems. Like, there's not a problem I've heard here tonight that I don't have a quick answer to, pretty quick, or at least I read the solutions, the case studies of all the various cities. I could get you that on a snap of a finger. We have a software, so we have 50,000 player accounts. We have free play where we operate. We have pay to play. We work with the city with whatever the values are of the city. There's not going to be a simple solution that I'm going to say to, because you got a bunch of problems. But I want to make one point that, you know, Culver City, you have a great problem. You got a really unique, cool. I'll say you got a cool problem. Most of the country is seeing tennis pickleball issues. Every city is having to deal with what you're having to deal with. So you're not alone at all. There's not a municipality that hasn't gone through this. So the information is out there on how to deal with that. Each problem needs to be looked at. You know, again, given the values of the city, the values of the community. You know, you obviously want to have safe play. You want to have enough play for pickleball, tennis, and paddle tennis. You want to have respect for the neighbors, the sound. You want to have rules that make sense. You want to have an easy way to play and to learn and to get involved in the various sports. I mean, everybody knows that, people know that racket sports are adding 7 years to everybody's life, you know, right now. So I would like to offer my help in any way that I can. As far as multi-lining courts, that was one of your specific items. I would recommend lining as many pickleball courts as possible in one area until you build your facility that is safe. So That's all. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
And then you have 5 more people. 4 people have signed up since public comment started. So the final 5 people are Joseph Feinberg, Steve Gumplo, Michael Monaghan, Ted Salter, and Paula Villafana. Joseph Feinberg.
Hi. Wanted to reiterate something that Steve was saying about how people are leaving the area, leaving Culver City to go to other communities to pay to play. And I've played in Culver City. I love playing Culver City. I prefer to play in Culver City. But if on other nights I've played in West Hollywood, I've played in Beverly Hills, I've played in Santa Monica, I've played in Westchester, and if we lose access to pickleball courts in Culver City, that's where me and my friends who normally meet up in Culver City and hang out in Culver City and want to go to Culver City will end up going other places. I know you guys have to find a solution, and I know that's going to be complex. But what I really like about coming to Culver City to play is that there's a community built around the free, open play environment, that the courts on Olinda have the bleachers so that we can mingle and chat. I've made a lot of friends playing at the courts in Culver City. We've built a community. We hang out outside of pickleball now. And I encourage you to keep in mind not just the fact that it's a sport, but that it's a community building enterprise, that we are bonding a lot more. And especially after a lot of our social lives and mental health got shredded during quarantine and we're rebuilding it, having access to a easy to enter with a low barrier to entry sport like pickleball, low barrier to entry both in skill and financially, that has a good positive environment around it. I understand that there's going to be pickleball players who are assholes, excuse my language, who are inappropriate and don't behave themselves as proper citizens. But a lot of the culture around pickleball here and elsewhere is an accepting, open environment. And I think that's important that people have access to that for their mental health and their physical health. Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve Gumplo.
Hi, Commission. Just want to thank you for putting this together. My name's Steve Gumplo. I'm a paddle tennis player and a leader with the National Paddle Tennis Leadership in Venice Beach, and also have been involved here quite a bit. So, we've been looking at this problem for a couple of years at least. We formed a meeting with about 10 leaders about this issue in Culver City and Venice. So we've really been looking at it a lot and talking to some of you as well. So a couple of things I want to say. One, the paddle tennis community is not happy with the new signs. Pickleball has never been officially approved here, and I also empathize with my pickleball friends, many of them. Many of our paddle tennis players play pickleball too and are very good at it, and many of them are here right now. But just to have the city put signs up that have ridiculous rules that don't even make sense, like playing 3 sets of paddle tennis in 30 minutes, is just not a good solution. So we would hope that you would engage our community and the pickleball community before you do something like that again. With the noise, pickleball, these things have been touched upon, but the shouting of the people, you get a lot of people on a court more than the paddle tennis, and there's a lot of noise with that. So that's a factor. With the sound mitigation, respectfully to the people who have spoken on the ability to have sound mitigation and dampen the sound, If you look across the country, that hasn't really worked. The paddles, the pickleball players don't want to play with these special paddles, so they want to play with their own paddles. So I wanted to weigh in on that, looking at my time here. You know, pickleball can be played anywhere. If you go to the pickleball websites, the National Association, it will tell you that. So I want you to take this very seriously. I first played pickleball in 1989 in a gymnasium, and it was wonderful. The bounce is very true on a gymnasium floor. So you can look to all the Culver City gymnasiums. You can look to all the Culver City schools for immediate solutions to this problem. Okay, so also I think one more point is for the first 6 months, we can have certain time periods that these neighbors can just have pickleball at certain times, and then we can go on from there and find new facilities, and the gyms could be used right away. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael Monaghan.
Good evening. Hello, Commissioners. I'm Michael Monaghan. I live in East Culver City in the Arts District and by Cronenthal Park, and I've been playing tennis there for over 20 years, usually about 3 times a week. And there are 2 little paddle tennis courts adjacent to the tennis court that have never been used, you know, for years and years and years, and now they're just overflowing with people playing. I am 100% for exercise, and particularly you see a lot of old people like me out there playing pickleball. And but when people ask me to play, I say, you know, I'm 72, I'm not 82. I said, check with me when I'm 82. But anyway, I'm really here just to urge you to do something, okay? Because there's tempers, I've seen tempers flare, and you know, like I said, I'm for people playing, but they have to have someplace to play. The noise of pickleball, my heart goes out to people because their house is right by those courts there. I live a few blocks away, so I don't hear it. And I can't imagine what it's like living in those houses. And that's a real serious concern. So I also, I know there are suggestions, you know, in Santa Monica, they have indoor, I think it's called Pickle Pop on this 3rd Street Promenade. And they play indoor. And I'm sure, and as someone else was saying too, you know, I've played pickleball in a parking lot. You know, you can do that. So, you know, perhaps you have access, city has access to indoor areas where people can play pickleball. I have nothing else to say. So thank you very much. And like the most important thing is just urging you to do something. You have to do something. Somebody has to do something. And I hope you will. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ted Salter.
Hello, my name is Ted Salter. I run a program at Fox Hills Park called Tennis for Kids. I've been there for 7 years. And I applaud Culver City Parks and Recreation. They've supported our program, and we've had a really good partnership, relationship with them. I want to tell a short story about one of their employees who was hired. I had already been there for 6 years, and they hired a new person. I'll say her name, Stephanie DeMall. And Stephanie asked me a question: how can we expand your program? And I thought, no one's ever asked me that. How can we expand the program? So after several brainstorming sessions, we came up with a couple of ideas. And we have over 1,200 kids a year using our program at Fox Hills Park. We also have, out of that brainstorming session, we did a couple of things that we'd never thought about before. We started cardio tennis for adults. Thursday nights, 7:30, sold out in advance for the year. We also added Tiny Tots tennis. I didn't think this would work. 8 a.m. on Saturday morning. especially in the wintertime. I thought, kids, that's not going to work. So I asked a few parents, and they said to me, Coach, our kids get up at 6 o'clock. Of course they'll be there at 8 in the morning. Sold out for the rest of the year. We could use more courts. Tennis is at its all-time high. I keep hearing this stuff about, oh, tennis is not going, it's going down. It's unbelievable. We have 3 kids who graduated from high school this year who all got tennis scholarships. One of the kids, Miles Whitehead, last year, he got a scholarship to Spain at the Rafa Nadal camp, where he went and graduated from high school in June. And now he's on his way to Sacramento State. I'm just here to say, let's not forget our youth, because I think that gets overlooked sometime and all the things we have to do. I think we've seen some great ideas on the table about how to solve the pickleball, paddleball, tennis problem. But let's not forget our youth, because if you look at what we really could do here, we could expand even more with our youth. More kids want to play tennis, believe me. A lot of our kids fill every school in this district, and we're proud of that. So I applaud you on your efforts, I applaud you on your plans, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Paulo Villafano, are you online? Paulo Villafana, are you online? Are you in chambers? And then the last speaker is Denise Neal.
Good evening, Parks and Rec Committee and community at large. My name is Denise Neal, and I have a 3-pronged question regarding progress in the parks and whether or not we'll have community input ongoing as we decide what's going to happen. Let me read my questions. Could you please provide us an update on Park and Rec's Botts Field and Veterans Park upgrade feasibility? Will there be ongoing community meetings regarding proposed usage, performance venues, and small micro-business vendors and permits? Also, I'd like to know if the pool and the Botts Field are going to be made venues for Olympian training or FIFA training for soccer and for the swimmers, as in the past. I'd like to also know if we're going to be considering bringing back a skate venue when we look at possibly putting the multiplex at Botts, if that's still going to be
Denise,
considered.
this is a moment to talk about anything you have to say about the tennis or racket courts.
I thought it was items
Not on the
not
agenda.
on the agenda. That's what I
No.
asked for.
No, sorry, I didn't know that's what you asked for.
Oh,
I will call you back up to talk about that.
yes, sir.
Okay, sorry
Pardon
about
me,
that.
everyone.
Thank you. I was thinking maybe she was getting to something like that about bots, but,
Oh, gosh,
okay.
yes. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Ms.
Okay.
Neal. Okay, thank you. Are there any other speakers?
There are no other speakers.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you all very much for your comments, suggestions, research, demonstrations, and so forth. I think, obviously, we're going to hear from each of the commissioners and get an idea as to what their input is, their opinions, and I'd like to frame this as hoping to discuss some potential solutions. This is not just hearing your input as we have before a number of times, but we really would like to get some solid ideas for solutions that we can suggest to staff that could be executed in a short time frame. So does everybody have access to their stuff? You're okay now? Okay. Okay, so let's start in the outer corners here. I'm going to start with our newest commissioner here.
Just throw me to the wolves. So yes, I'm the newest commissioner here. So this is the second time I've actually heard the issues with pickleball, tennis, and paddle tennis. I first off think that we really, if we continue with the pickleball, which it seems like we should because there is a large community here that is using the courts, that we really need to look into the sound mitigation, not just look into it, but apply it. And I did like the idea of putting the pickleball inside. One that would be a big sound mitigation. But it's looking for gymnasiums. I think in Culver City, we don't have that many gymnasiums that I know of. That's something that I would have to look into. All I know of right now is the high school gymnasium, and then at Vets Park, the auditorium, which actually is a basketball court in there. But, and that could be a possibility. It already has seats. I don't think it gets used for basketball, does it? It does?
Yes.
So, but it would be then seeing how often is it used? Frequently?
Every night.
Every
Except
night.
for Wednesday night, the AA uses
Right.
it for a large meeting.
But during the day, in the mornings?
Not basketball, we have different rentals.
Right.
Not every day, there's
So
sporadic.
that becomes a challenge. But that's something that I think we definitely need to, because I don't think there are any other rooms that would be appropriate for that at the Vets facility. Restriping or sharing the courts, I am not as familiar with what the usage is out there. So that's something I would have to do research with or cede to the other commissioners, because honestly, this is my second meeting. So I'm just here. But I'm happy to be here and I'm willing to learn, and I really want to be able to work with our community and see and do what's best for the entire community. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bond.
Great, thank you. I haven't been on the committee that much longer than Commissioner Bond. But first, I want to thank all of you for coming out. I really appreciated, I forget, I wrote it down, Joseph, there was somebody who said that they hadn't understood the issues and now feels like they understand the sound issues. So I think like that is just one thing we really hoped to get out of this meeting, was just that people would start to understand the different communities. And by doing some of that, maybe we could have a little bit of shared understanding. I think the big issue, and we see this with every single sport in the city, is we don't have enough park space for everybody. We see this AYSO and Little League yell at each other. We've got the racket sports yelling at each other, the basketball folks. And so just, I'll just point out, we have this master plan going on right now, so definitely put your input in with the master plan and say that. But I think we should think about short, midterm, and long-term solutions. Maybe we need to do something in the short term in terms of at least having people register to play on the courts, and maybe limit the hours for pickleball just on the Olinda courts, not on the other courts, but just on the Olinda courts, where it's not starting so early and not going so late at night. And if we combine that with a registration system, maybe that helps mitigate some of the tension. I know we got one comment that somebody was talking about people sort of claiming the courts and and dealing with that. maybe as a mid-term solution, this expo line solution just sounds really interesting to look into. And it seems like maybe that wouldn't be too, I mean, God knows I say it won't be too expensive, but who knows with construction these days. But I also like that that also has a dual implication of also, there's some negative space there that could just become a space for junk. Like people basically throw stuff there, but that could then become usable space. So we could think about looking at that as sort of midterm. And then a longer term would be like building out the bots plan. But I think for the shorter term, we should think about, are there ways to limit hours? And is there some relatively quick and not too expensive soundproofing we can do at the Olinda course that would actually work? I mean, it's not worth spending money if it's not actually going to work. And then also thinking about potentially restriping and moving them over to vets, which is also near houses, but is, much farther away from houses than it is right now. So I think, these are all great suggestions. But I think we should make it possible for the tennis players to play, the paddle tennis players to play, the pickleball players to play, and the neighbors not to lose their minds. So I think if we can come up with ways to make that all work, that would be great.
Thank you, Commissioner Peters. I'm going to go to Commissioner Mohammed next, and then the Vice Chair.
You didn't say chair.
No, I didn't say chair this time.
All right. I'd like to echo my fellow commissioners in thanking the public for coming out. Your feedback is important. I was hoping to get the kinds of feedback that we got tonight, so thank you for everything you guys have shared. I came here with some ideas of kind of the direction I thought we should be going, and I heard a lot of information today from the public that supported some of those ideas, rejected some of those ideas, but I'm always open to hearing new ways of thinking about things and how we can solve the problems that face all of us, right? And trying to resolve these kinds of conflicts. I am the longest serving member of this commission at this point. So I remember way back when we first heard about pickleball, they showed up to a meeting where we were discussing field usage for adult soccer play. Not even the topic we were talking about, and pickleball showed up. And at that point, that's when everything kind of started in those conversations. So we've been talking about pickleball now for 6 years. We didn't know what to do with it when we originally got it. Then they started moving in on the Olinda courts to play there and adjusting the nets and making all the pickleball players upset. So then we had to come up with a solution in some way to accommodate. And we struggled with that for a while, trying to figure out what the right solution was. Ultimately, we came down to we needed to accommodate the new and growing sport of pickleball. And then there was the question of where. And again, it fell upon the shoulders of the Olinda courts to fulfill that space because the community had already moved there. So some members of the public kind of questioned this commission on whether or not we are allowing pickleball in the city. We have. It's already been decided. We already did it. So that's not really something in front of this body. Nobody here in this body is considering not allowing pickleball. We know it's here, it's coming, it's been coming, it is here now, and it's not going to go away. Doesn't seem to be a passing fad game. It looks like it's going to be here for long term. So we need to have, as my fellow commissioners have mentioned, short, medium, and long-term solutions to how we can fully accommodate all the racket sports in Culver City. I've heard, and we heard from the survey that was done a couple of years back, tennis community is not insignificant in Culver City. They are actually very vocal, and they are very busy. And they came out in force to inform this commission in the surveys that they did not want to share their courts. And they were the overwhelming voice, which honestly surprised this commission. So we listened to that community and the survey responses, and we acted accordingly. That is one of the reasons why we made steps to make changes at the Olinda courts to accommodate pickleball in addition to paddle tennis. Obviously, we did not hear from the community that lived nearby. And probably they didn't come out to tell us anything because they didn't even know it was a problem yet, because pickleball was still relatively new. So now that it is established, and now we have eyewitness testimony to how that impacts the neighbors there, that's something we only got kind of recently, within the past 6 months, that the neighbors came out to share their experiences and their troubles and tribulations. So that's why one of the reasons that's driving this meeting tonight is to figure out how do we accommodate those residents there in addition to tennis, paddleball, and pickleball, right? So all have competing, well, sometimes dovetailing interests, and we're trying to figure out a way forward with that. So that's kind of the history of how we got here. So this is not a new phenomenon for this body, maybe for many of the members on this body, but it's not a new phenomenon for this body itself. In terms of solutions, I heard a lot of great ideas. I'll just, like my fellow commissioner broke it down to kind of short, medium, and long term, I'll do it that same way. So short term, I think it's at the very least, we need to make use of the capital funds that we have available to us for soundproofing, and we need to do that as quickly as possible. I know staff knows how urgently I feel like how urgently I think we should use money that's been put aside for capital improvements, and that it shouldn't sit in that fund for a long time. So that money has been set aside. I recommend that we make use of that as quickly as possible. I know at our last meeting, the director brought a sample of the materials that he was looking at. I would like to hear kind of the findings on that material, because I know there was some further research that was going to be done. So I'd like to find out how effective it is, since we're hearing mixed information from, at least from what I've heard from the public tonight, that it kind of works or it doesn't really work, but we want something. And I think long-term at the Olinda courts, let's say pie in the sky, we get the miracle of brand-new pickleball-only courts away from all the people. I don't think these paddle tennis courts are going to go anywhere, and I think it'll still be useful to have that sound-absorbing material for the residents who live there. Second, I heard a lot of feedback tonight about the signage at the courts, and I know we just did it, but I think that one didn't seem controversial to me. Everybody kind of complained about the signage is not adequate. So maybe we do need to consider coming back again and fixing that signage. Again, this is a short-term, near-term solution to help clarify a lot of things and address issues that kind of all of the interested parties there are engaged in. The music, we just redid the municipal code. Clearly, it states in there that music is not allowed to be played without a permit. So, that's one thing we can easily kind of put on there. We can consider the asking or stating that you can only use kind of that new sound dampening equipment, the things to think about. I'm not trying to tell you what to put in it right now. I think it'll be important to perhaps talk to the community. They all seem to have some ideas, and we can bring that together and come up with some good, solid signage that everybody understands clearly and can be enforced easily, right? That's the other piece, right? Let's see, the other short-term solution is I do think we really need to consider changing the hours of the courts. 10 o'clock is really late. And I think that, I know we have lights, I know a lot of our facilities are open that late, but, in respect to the neighbors nearby, let's consider kind of changing the hours a little bit to be a little more reasonable. I don't think that's too much to ask for, and I think we can do that. All right, so that's my short-term kind of things. Oh, one other thing, we did bring up, Commissioner Bond brought up, hey, what about vets? I'd be interested to see if we could use the, basketball courts at any point that it might be useful. I don't know, but it's a good thing to just examine and see if that's something reasonable or not. If it's not, it's not. Right? I understand, there's a lot of different uses for that space because It is a multi-purpose location. So, all right, moving on, medium term. I really like the idea of putting those courts under the subway line. I think that that is a good use of space that's really neglected at this point. So I had been thinking about it before, again, going back to the adult play for soccer, whether or not we could maybe fit futsal or something like that underneath there, but I don't think that space could handle that, but pickleball may be a better fit for that. So I really would like us to explore that with Metro and see if they're open to partnering with us to try to make that happen, because I think that could be a great boon to the community. I heard tonight that a lot of corporate players are now, so the business district that's right there in the Hayden Tract, that's an easy walk for a lot of those people right after work to go right and play some pickleball. So I think that that's something we should really, really, really explore. I thought it was a great idea, and I think we can probably make something happen with that if we work at it. I also had another thing. I only heard one person bring up the CCUSD courts today, and that was in, hey, let's restripe some tennis courts and move them to CCUSD, right? One thing that I noticed while I walked by there for different sporting events there, there is an asphalt court there that is little used. And so maybe we might think about exploring with CCUSD converting one of their underused asphalt court into a pickleball space that could house 4 courts there. So that could fit some space. So that's something we could also explore too on the medium term. And I don't know how well our MOU discussions keep going and what kind of relationships we have, but hopefully that might be a discussion we can engage them in. And again, that would be dual use, right? During school hours, kids can use it. That'd be, addition to their, PE program that they could use. And then after hours, make it available to the public to use. And then I know I floated this to the director at one point, but we should probably consider also exploring if we could put pickleball courts on top of some of our municipal parking structures. I don't think there's a lot of parking that goes on up there. Again, no expert in how that might work, but I think that's something we should try to explore. Obviously, there'll be ample parking for people who want to play there. But again, I don't know what the sound implications might be or anything else, but that's kind of space that may be underutilized in the city that could function for dedicated pickleball courts. So basically, all my medium-term ideas are, how can we make dedicated pickleball courts in underutilized or not traditionally thought of park spaces? Long-term, clearly the feasibility study plan for Culver City Park offered a vision of the future for pickleball in Culver City. That design, or it's not even a full design, but the conceptualization of what we would do with Culver City Park in that vision from the feasibility study offered that pickleball complex that many of the public were talking about. So obviously that's been approved, the feasibility study has been approved by the City Council, but it will take a significant amount of money to make that vision a reality. And so hopefully we can continue along that path, but that is, I think, again, a long-term project, as the amount of funds it would take to get that started are significant and would more likely than not require a city bond, which also takes a little while to pull together. So those are my thoughts and potential solutions from me.
Thank you, Commissioner Mohammed. Vice Chair Alexander,
Thank you.
I know you've been waiting very patiently.
Yes. I want to thank you all for coming here to address this body. And for those of you in the audience who've played any kind of racquetball sport, you're my people. You really are. I've played pickleball. I'm primarily a tennis player. I play 4 or 5 times a week, and I'm on a USTA team. So I have played on every tennis court in town. I haven't played on all the pickle paddle courts, and I haven't been to the high school recently, but I have a good sense of what the facilities are that we have. And I actually looked up, you might be amused at this, because I was thinking about, the growth that you have demonstrated to us for the pickle community really tells me that we need to find solutions for you. But I also want to find a solution that isn't going to tread upon the paddle community or the tennis community either. So I just wanted you to know that of all the racket sports you can possibly think of, there are 18 of them that are netted racket sports, and there are 27 of them that are non-netted racket sports. So hopefully we won't have all of those growing in the future. But the Sports and Fitness Industry Association tells us in 2023 in the United States that there are 24 million tennis players and 13.6 million pickleball players, but it is correct that the picklers are growing faster than the tennis community. So somehow we need to accommodate all of this. And I want to thank all the commissioners that have spoken so far for the ideas they have come up with and in the community. And I wanted to let all of you know, in case you didn't know it, I really appreciate that Councilmember Pusa has come to this meeting as an individual, but he is on the council, so he has heard everything that you've had to say here. And what that tells me is that this is a very important issue. We may be talking about it in this room with just, people who are interested in racket sports or how we can accommodate it in ways that do not disturb the sanctity of our neighborhoods. But I would like to see some kind of solutions that just aren't working within Park and Recreation, but we can reach out to our other departments. And I know some of the commissioners have sort of touched upon that, but what I would like to encourage, and I'm actually going to work a little bit backwards just to be different here. I'm going to start kind of like the long-term ones, and then I'm going to go back to the short-term ones. I think back to, if some of you are familiar, have gone to the dog park at all, you know where that's located. Do you know what that area used to be? It used to be an area where the Public Works Department stored things like old light poles and a bunch of other things. Over a 6-year period, there was a group of people who really desperately wanted a dog park, but they didn't want to take over, they didn't come to the city and say, we've got to have this space in one of these parks. They worked with the city, they became a nonprofit, they collected funds, they worked with the city, they worked with all the departments, they found that place, it got cleared, cut to the chase, they have a dog park there now. That's a model. I'd like to work with that kind of model in working with some of the other departments to find out where some of the other spaces that we may have available in the city. I do love the idea brought up by Mrs. Sullivan regarding the space underneath the Metro Rail area. In fact, I went out there at her request one time to actually look at it, just to get a feel for it, because I've been to all the courts, but that one isn't a court yet. One of the things that I would like to explore about that possible area is, I know they do this in the tennis world, and I would think that maybe we can do it with pickle and paddle tennis too. If we have any opportunities of using a court surface on a temporary basis in a location to see how that works before we go to the large expense of putting down actual concrete. That way, We can check out some potential of other spaces that we have available in the city. Maybe we have that on a short-term basis with Metro to figure out that space underneath there. And we could then provide some spaces that could be dedicated to the pickleball community, because I really believe that with the solutions that we've heard here tonight, we have some potentials of places where we can keep them separate. And why I think that's important, it's because I spoke to a friend of mine who's a professional tennis and pickleball instructor. She can't be here right now because she's teaching in Sweden right now. But what she told me is it's not optimal for any of the racket sports to really be playing on surfaces that are multi-lined. And I can tell you this personally, because I played on those tennis courts at Westchester where they're multiple lined. This may work for the pickleball players or the paddle tennis players if they allow them there, because the balls just don't come that fast. When, even at my age, and I'm 66, when I go out and hit a tennis ball, I can probably hit it 30, 35 miles an hour. Take somebody in the audience who's younger, it's going to be that much faster. It's going to be a nightmare trying to figure out, is the ball in, is it out? Those are the kind of controversies you really don't want to have happening. You want people to have an enjoyable time. So I don't believe multi-striping is a solution. I think some of the ideas brought up tonight to keep them separate is the way to go. And I think Culver City actually has the bandwidth and the capacity to do it. I'd now like to address the problems of, unfortunately for the neighbors, on Wagner Street. And I went to actually visit some of them too, so that I could see and hear again for myself. And when I stepped out of my car, I immediately heard it. And I'm parked on the street, so then you have a lawn, then you have the homes, then you have the buffer zone, and then you have the court. I could hear it very clearly from the street, so I understand the issue. I am in complete concurrence with Commissioner Mohammed that I would like to see some of the funds that we already have in the CIP budget to try to put up the soundproofing, to see if that would work. And at the last meeting when we were discussing whether we were going to have this meeting, and I'm really glad we did, I suggested that if the city can have time periods when construction in your neighborhood can stop, if it's really that obtrusive of a sound that the pickleball courts are creating right now, then I also in total agreement that we should strongly consider, and I know that the director has the authority by the municipal code of doing something to reduce the hours until we can create some of these other spaces, which I think we can. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree with all of those. Staff, make it happen. No, you know, I think I do want to thank the public again. I also want to thank staff for putting together some really excellent information for us. Seeing the evaluations that were done in the other cities was really, really revealing, very enlightening. And they also have addressed a number of these things within their communities as well. As was said, this is a nationwide issue across municipalities and counties. And so we're not alone. And that's actually a good thing, because there have been a number of ideas expressed tonight that also have been put forward by other cities, ways to mitigate the issues of sound, the issues of times, the issues of conflicts on their courts. And so we've got a lot of resources to pull from in order to come up with the short, medium, and long-term solutions. I think we have all come to some understanding and agreement that there have been some very primary, immediate term strategies that we can apply. But, okay, so I'm going to go through them one by one and remind me if I miss any of them. Oh, yes.
I just wanted permission. Would you mind if I maybe just address some of the things that have been brought up
Oh,
tonight before
sure,
you
absolutely.
make your decision, and just want to throw some more feedback out there if you'd like to hear it?
Okay, that would be great, because my question was going to be, what kinds of costs are we looking at? What kinds of timeframes and so forth? So,
Well, you can also let you ask those questions, but I just wanted to provide some feedback based on, I mean, I made notes on every single person that spoke tonight. I want the commission to know, I want the community to know that I take this extremely serious. Since I've gotten here, I think it's kind of become a joke sometimes when I'm in meetings, when we're discussing things, and I'm like, can we put pickleball courts there? And I think people just like kind of laugh at me, and I'm like, no, I'm serious. Can we put pickleball courts there? So I am constantly, when I drive through the city, I like, even not even just within the city, I've even found some property that like borders right on the city where I'm looking for space for pickleball courts. I'll figure out how to get the money later to build them, but I'm looking for space for pickleball courts, always. And also within our existing locations like Culver City Park, things like that. And the feasibility study, the reason that there was pickleball courts on there was because that was the first thing I said was, can we put pickleball courts in there somewhere? And they found a place to put them. So just know that's where I'm coming from. I'm leaving no stone unturned to find places to put pickleball courts. I've got feelers out to Metro. I'm trying to set up a meeting with them to discuss the location that Ms. Sullivan brought up. So I've already started that process as far as reaching out to them. Some of the other things that have come up, the courts at the high school, currently we do not have access to them through the MOU, but we are in the process of renewing the MOU, and I know that was a topic of discussion. I think Commissioner Alexander was at the liaison committee meeting with the school district and the city council where it was brought up, and I think that's going to be part of the negotiations for the new MOU, but we'll see how that goes. But that is definitely something we're looking at. I do want you to know when it comes to the noise mitigation, we have gotten quotes. I've been doing research. This is a really good product that is supposed to work, but we don't know. I went yesterday on a Sunday. I drove out to Newport Beach where these were installed on some courts from a house that's 15 feet away from the courts. And it was interesting. I actually spoke to the resident that lived in the home, spent about 30, 45 minutes with her. I really felt for her. She's at her wit's end. She's ready to sell her house and move. She hired an attorney to try to get, and pickleball has been stopped there for now until they got these put in. She's going to allow them to start playing again. And then, so they haven't started playing yet, so I wasn't able to see if they work. But she's going to let me know when they start playing again. I'm going to go back out there, spend some time with her and see how it's working. We can still move forward with installing these at Olinda. The quote that we've gotten to put these in now is roughly just short of $50,000 to install soundproofing at the Olinda courts, if we wanted to try that. That would wrap the Olinda length, the length along the alley, and about 2/3 of the side that goes up by the Gem and Mineral Society. So it almost fully wrap 3 walls for that cost. So yeah, so I just want you to know that I put a lot of work and effort into this, and my team, Adam and Gabby, did this survey and put all this information together, did an amazing job. I noticed on the survey that it sounded like there's some soundproofing working in Irvine from what I saw, so I'm going to reach out to Irvine and see if I can maybe go check that out and see where those are and how the sound mitigation's working there, what product they used. So I just wanted to share that with you, that I take this extremely serious, and like I said, I really felt for that woman yesterday, and I feel for these residents here too. When I was in Long Beach, it was the same thing when we had put courts right next to people's homes. it was a rough situation. So I feel for all of that. And I understand where everyone's coming from, and I'm doing everything I can to try to get new courts. But again, that's all long-term, midterm to long-term stuff. So I'll free to take any other questions that you might have, though.
Thank you. Do any of the commissioners have follow-up questions for Director Stevens? Yes.
I don't know if you have an idea yet as to how exactly you will install that product. Can it be installed in a way that hopefully it won't be damaged? Because I know we've had the issues. I know the problem that I have is some of the things that were mentioned here by the community are more of what I call behavioral issues. And those get to be tougher unless they raise to the level that we would get the police involved, and that's pretty high. And so we've had them at a lower level, so I hope that that can be installed in such a way that it would not be damaged.
So they would be installed on the inside as opposed to the outside. So anyone damaging in them, I can't ever guarantee anything, but we do try to lock the courts most nights when we have staff available. And I'll be working with my team to see if we can increase those efforts to try to get it every day. It's just, tough with staffing. But yeah, it would be installed on the inside of the fencing.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Commissioner Peters.
I have question about the fencing and gates. Is there not some other locking mechanism, like an electronic locking mechanism whereby, people could register and get a code and enter, and the gate locks behind them, that would mean that we don't have to send somebody out there?
I was actually, a couple months ago, I was actually doing some research on trying to find some way to do an electronic lock that's somehow Wi-Fi or something. So I'm not opposed to that. I just haven't been able to identify anything yet that would work in that area.
Yeah, I feel that would be a challenge, right? Because all it takes is one person has a code and then somebody holds the door open or jams it open. 'Cause
Right.
if they're willing to break the lock, I think it's real easy to just jam it open. So unfortunately, right, yeah. So I know Commissioner Peters, you brought up like, hey, we should have registration, and I'm 100% behind that. The problem is enforcement, feasibility study, right? That could be controlled access, and we could totally do that. And then most likely those fees would be enough to fund some personnel to be there when the courts are open. So like long-term, yeah, let's do it. But in the short term, I can't see any.
No, but it is interesting. I was doing some research on that type of stuff.
Of course you
And just on this registration idea, you have to register when you want to rent the picnic areas, and there's often people sitting there, and you're like, well, am I going to make an issue or not? In the same sort of way, if it's becoming an issue whereby people are fighting over access to the courts, or as in that one comment that people are saying, oh, I've got the court all day to teach a lesson, even just a list to be that's posted every day, no, you don't, might be useful for those sorts of issues.
Yeah, and I would just say when someone rents the picnic shelters, generally they have it for the day. So it's one group, one day. And we do have staff. They staff come and clean it in the morning, and they will respond and kick people off if they need to. For courts, though, if they were doing it every hour, it would be a lot more staffing involved because you'd be having several, 3 different courts.
I think it's just having an official list up there can often do a lot in terms of regulating time. But that doesn't seem to necessarily be the biggest issue.
Yeah, I would bring up, though, mentioning that we need staff there, right? I know in the wonderful survey that was done with the partner city, with the other cities in California, one of the, I forget which one it was, said that they hauled in $250,000 just from registration fees for using the courts. that could definitely offset manpower to monitor the courts.
I can tell you that I think this is the current rate. It's $7 an hour on the pay-for-play courts at LA, an hour, and they get used a lot, so that's probably an accurate number.
So, I mean, that could be one way to maybe balance. I mean, I know staffing is really hard right now, so finding people to actually do the work is a whole nother barrel of monkeys, but that could be a revenue stream that could fund that monitoring.
I'm being told that WeHo actually contracts out their registration system, and they have a consultant that, hires and monitors staff and handles all the registration. So I can reach out to them and see how their program's working and revenue generation and all those things. I think we had someone here from,
Yes, we did.
You left.
sorry, I think,
Josh,
Yeah, Josh Oswald?
yes.
okay, I know someone involved in WeHo that can probably make the connection for me.
I was also wondering, just the question in regards to even having an automatic lock, that that would be set at a certain time where it locks and then it unlocks. And, that would potentially make it so when we set a time of what the hours are for play, if they're automatically locked, it's not going to open up until the time. Obviously, the issue could be that he's just walked in. But obviously, the issue could be that someone would then stick something in there to keep the door open. So we're faced with that challenge. It's not like the plunge where the door locks and you can't keep it open.
No, like I said, I spent a fair amount of time trying to see if I could find something that might work. I haven't been able to find anything yet, but I haven't given up.
Okay, so I have a few questions for staff associated with a number of these strategies that have been brought forward and discussed, and that we've actually discussed before as well. In terms of timelines and staff resources, and obviously city financial resources as well. So for soundproofing, that idea has been discussed a number of times, and it sounds like that is something that is a short-term strategy that can be implemented at Alenda, and you've already got the ball rolling on that. So I think we need to put a check mark next to that. My question with regard to that is, once that contract is triggered, what kind of timeline can we expect to have that mitigation element implemented?
The panels are custom made, so I would have to check with the manufacturer on how quick they could turn them around. But like we've obtained 3 quotes. We could move forward with getting a contract, and then it would just a matter of how long. I'd have to find out how long it would take to make them. They can install them in a few hours.
Okay, so that's pending.
Yeah,
that
I
part of
can
that process.
probably report back to you at our next meeting and give you an update.
Okay, thank you. Time restrictions specifically on the Alenda courts were also identified multiple times. I think this is something that also is short-term. We could implement in the short term, but it would require notification, and it would also require the associated signage that needs to be very specific. From what I've heard for many months, and in addition to the work that was done by an original pickleball ad hoc subcommittee from this commission, there seems to be a belief in the paddle tennis and pickleball community that they have already figured out what times they are each using the courts. And we received a comment from a member of the public that said that she went to play pickleball on the Olinda courts at 8 o'clock in the morning. There were paddle tennis people there who said, no, we use these courts. Paddle tennis only uses the courts Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Well, that's not been implemented by the city. That was apparently some kind of an agreement that might have been made amongst the people at the time, which seems great, except that if you weren't there at the time as one of those people, you're not going to know that that potentially was a community agreement. So in my mind, pickleball and paddle tennis need to have specific restricted hours somehow so that they are not using the courts at the same time. Because until we have dedicated space exclusively for pickleball, we're going to have these issues. And when they're both on the courts in the same time frames, we seem to have some of the behavior issues that have also been reported. So is that a feasible option in terms of time restriction? First of all, changing from 6 a.m. or 6:30 or dawn or whatever it is now to 10, restrict the use of those courts completely from make it 8 to a particular time in the evening, maybe until 9 or 8, or we'll talk about that, as well as restricting each sport for specific times within each day. Is that something that's feasible?
I can tell you we did that in Long Beach, and it didn't work at all.
What were the main issues?
Because even though it might say priority for tennis, because we had dual striped tennis and pickleball on one court in a park, and we had like days, hours, it was all signed, like from this hour to this hour on these days, it's pickleball is priority. But if there's no pickleball there, you can play tennis, but if someone from pickleball shows up, you have to give them the court, and vice versa. And basically whoever was on the court said, I'm not leaving. So I don't care what the sign says, I don't care who has priority. I'm here now, I'm playing, you weren't here, I'm not leaving.
Okay.
That was, could it be different here? I don't know. I'm just letting you know it didn't work in Long Beach.
I know it was ambitious, but
Like I said, maybe
yeah.
people are different here and nicer. I don't know. But
I don't know about that. But, okay, so then with regard to time restriction of the Olinda courts,
yeah, certainly. Right now, I have staff that go and lock the courts at 10, or we have the lights go off at 10. So we could have the lights go off at 9, 9:30, 8:30. Like we could have the lights. I mean, it stays light. The sun doesn't set right now until 8:30. So even without lights, they're going to be able to play that late. We could have the lights go off at 9. We could have the lights go off sooner.
what time does staff open the courts in the mornings?
We have staff that try to open them at 8. Sometimes they get there a little bit early because it's on their way to work. So it's whatever time they're getting to work. So it might be 7:45, but it's 8 o'clock is what we shoot for, as close to 8 as possible. When we're able to lock it, there are still a couple nights a week. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night, I don't have staff available to lock it up at night and to open in the morning. Those would have to be new staff. I'd have to look and see if we have staff available that I could, it would be, unbudgeted staffing to have them lock and open up in the mornings on those days. So I can look at that to see if that's possible. But the other nights, Monday night through Thursday night, we lock them up at 10 and open them at 8 in the morning.
I just think from everything that we've heard, I just think 10 o'clock is way too late. I think 9 o'clock might even be too late. Yes, Commissioner Peters.
So one thing I think I understood from the neighbors is that paddle tennis does not seem to be as loud and as big of an issue as pickleball. So I'm wondering if, instead of saying like this hour's like paddle tennis gets priority and these hours get pickleball gets priority, this is maybe gonna make pickleball players unhappy, but like, if there's certain times of the day we could just say no pickleball at these times. And I would say like, let's get together with the neighbors and ask them like, are you working from home and you don't want it during the workday? Or is it like, you don't want it in the morning? Like, figure out some sort of way until the soundproofing comes in. And then maybe once the soundproofing comes in, we could remove all these restrictions. But for like the next 2-3 months until there's soundproofing, you know, if there was some way to say like, it's okay for paddle tennis to play up until 10, but pickleball needs to be over by 8. And then maybe our nice clapping paddle tennis folks over here would say, I know we just have the courts from this time, so I'm not gonna go during the other times, and like, be nice about it, in a way. Just something, you know, in the very short term. And then if we get the soundproofing on, and it actually works, we remove that. But say like short term, and it's not gonna totally work because, you know, people are gonna come on and break the rules, but like maybe it would make some people more conscientious and get some of the help.
So
You know-
my,
Can I have
Yeah,
a quick
yes, go
question?
ahead.
This has to do with soundproofing. I'm kind of curious about the soundproofing because as a musician, they soundproof rooms so that bands can play in there and no sound comes out of that room. And granted, you have a box, you have a lid on top of it. But so I'm curious as to why we aren't capable of at least muffling it a lot. Are these companies actually working with musicians or companies that do this type of soundproofing that would create it so that it really brings the decibels down? I mean, I find interesting that they're still struggling. The padding is great, but you know, when you're talking about concrete and sound, that magnifies it tenfold. So it might be definitely contact that HOA in Irvine and find out what they're doing. But I would be curious about that company or the companies that you've talked to, if they've actually done any research with companies or if they've done any soundproofing for musical bands that, you know, because they have, when you go into a studio, they have multiple studios and all of those rooms are completely soundproofed so that it doesn't interfere with the people who are recording.
So my son is a musician, and I bought soundproofing to put on his walls in his bedroom so that we don't have to hear it in the other room. So
And how did that go?
I'm familiar with it. It works okay. So most of the companies that I research and sells these types of things, it's usually industrial. And so they have heavy machinery that's operating and they're trying to protect the hearing of their employees. And so that is generally where you find this stuff. And me being in construction a long time ago, I've come across this stuff. I've seen this stuff, I'm pretty sure it's the same stuff, used on a drilling rig for the water department in Long Beach. They were drilling 24/7 about 30 feet from homes, and it was insanely loud how that much equipment was. So they actually built like 50-foot walls around it and lined the whole thing, I think, with 2 or 3 layers of this. And it worked. It kept the noise down, but it was really tall. So the concern would be the noise hitting it, going up and over, and maybe now the homes right next door. Oh, this happens with freeway walls often, where they put walls up next to freeways and the sound just misses these ones and ends up landing 2 or 3 blocks over, and they hear the noise. This is supposed to be damp, like absorbing the noise, not just bouncing it. So I'm hopeful that it'll help. I don't think it's going to make it completely go away, but I think it has the potential to really lower the amount that our neighbors are hearing. If that answers your question.
Thank you. So with regard to Commissioner Peters' idea, it sounds like that could be a challenge to say, this is your court now, this is your court now. I mean, we did, I think.
I think the challenge would just be the enforcement part of it.
The enforcement,
Through
so.
the chair, instead of doing it like parts of the day while we're in this interim period before we put the soundproofing on there, why don't we say, one day a week, it's open to everybody, and the other days of the week, it's like,
You get Monday,
Mondays
Tuesday,
pickleball, Tuesdays paddle, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then I don't know if that would help. Just an idea.
Yeah, that's almost exactly what we did in Long Beach. I could probably get you copies of the signs that we had up over there.
I guess then it really comes down to hours, that we're just going to have to cut the hours until we can, I mean, just until we get the soundproofing up, and hopefully that works it. Maybe, I would say 8 o'clock at night if you have young children and you're trying to get them to bed. That's really difficult to do with a lot of sound.
I'd say match whatever hours that we currently have for construction.
Yeah,
Oh,
well,
that's like
construction, I
5.
believe, is 5.
Is it
That's
5?
5.
Okay,
That's
then
5.
not do that. Oh, 5 in the morning?
No,
or
no,
the
no.
No, in the evening.
7 a.m. and 5 in the
Thought it was
morning.
later somehow, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So looking at the survey that the staff put together here on the hours, it looked like on average, I would say, I mean, I didn't mathematically do this, but on average from my perusal, it looked like 8 o'clock seemed to be a pretty solid stopping time for a lot of these cities. So I don't think that's unreasonable.
8 to 8, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Yeah, I mean, I'd push it to, 9 to 8, honestly. That way we don't have a staff problem in the morning to open it, because they should be able to, that gives them a little more window to get there. But just ideas, right?
So construction is 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Adam just looked it up.
Oh, it used to be.
Thank you,
7 to
Adam.
5. Okay.
I would
People
put that
come out at
forward as this, part of this plan. 8 to 8, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Is everybody, okay.
Well, I would think also if we get this done sooner with it, but it sounds like it's going to be a couple of months, that maybe, especially when school starts, which is here at the end of August, do it at 9, because we have a lot of traffic coming through on Alunda with people dropping their kids off, just to prevent, the
9
amount.
a.m..
9 a.m., do it at 9
0900.
a.m. Yeah, 0900.
You mean once school starts?
When school is starting, it gets really, really busy through Alunda there, and I think if, just to do 9, I kind of feel for them on the weekends too at 9 a.m., people coming out at 8 a.m., I don't know. No, I want to be sure that we get everybody a chance to get out there.
Yeah, because it was absolutely true, whoever in the audience said that, with respect to you play racket sports and you live longer, and it's the mental thing and the health thing, it's wonderful. So yes, we still want to encourage it. I see this as a short-term solution till we can get beyond.
What are your thoughts on the 9 o'clock versus 8 o'clock a.m.?
I'm neutral as to either.
Okay. Any other thoughts on 8 versus 9? I mean, if we're getting into the real, nitty-gritty here to have something happen.
I'm with whatever makes staff easier with staff. If it's easier to push it to 9 a.m., I mean, I would say on the weekends, maybe it would be better to say 9 a.m. But I'm not a morning person on the weekend, so having somebody play pickleball next to my house that early would be crazy. But, I think whatever is the staff hours, that could mean that we could actually get somebody there. And I don't know, I mean, I know there's staff at vets on the weekends, but I don't know what time they leave. So, or there's usually staff at vets.
What's the staffing component?
It's like we typically, their staff are off at 8 o'clock on the weekends,
So 8 o'clock.
typically, unless there's a late permit or something.
Okay. So what about a starting time? 8 or 9? Which one would be better for staff?
On the weekends, 9 a.m. would probably be better to open.
Sounds to me that 9 a.m. is the right time to start at the earliest.
Yes.
All week?
And I
Yeah,
think
Week-long.
being consistent is going to be better.
It's going to have to be
I
consistent.
mean, because we're taking something away, albeit temporarily, so.
well, we'll see how temporary, but yeah.
Okay. So that looks like the next component, and anybody who likes to play pickleball earlier than that will have to go to another park.
Yeah, the other parks will be open.
Yes, okay. All right, there was the issue of music being played. As was identified, that is counter to the code, the municipal code. There's not to be any loud music, any music played on courts. Is that correct?
In parks.
In parks, on courts, in parks, without a permit.
Actually, I take that back. It's not in the code, but it is specifically in the
Our rules.
in
that
the
we just-
rules.
Yeah,
that
I think
we
it's
enacted.
amplified.
Amplified.
Amplified music, so,
So you can play acoustic guitar, but no electric guitars or any radios or anything like that.
okay, so,
So since a speaker would be an amplification system, technically speaking.
the other thing that I'm thinking while we're identifying all of these potentially, not necessarily, well, some of these things are new, but the things that need to be really reinforced, this is all about signage again. And the last time we went through the signage thing, it took months for us to get there. We can't do months anymore. And I know we also have incorporated into this item the opportunity to have an ad hoc subcommittee for a very specific task, because ad hoc subcommittees are, that's the point of them. They don't just talk about things generally, there's a task. So if that's something that we need to do so that that can be addressed immediately and the associated issues with signage can be, identified right away, so the signs can be made right away and we can get all of these things in place within a month at the latest, or if not weeks, I don't know. What is your feeling on that, Director?
Let me look at what options we have available if we can get something made up relatively quick, because we're just talking about posting hours, correct?
Hours, behavior, I know that this was one of the things that we talked about extensively before, is how many rules do you need to have on a sign to have people play nice in the sandbox? We decided at one point, I believe, that there would be, and I think it is on the signage, reference to, go here for all the other rules. But it sounds like people aren't going there for the other rules, and they don't seem to care about the behavior that is, allowable on the court.
Some of the current rules, we have some of the new signs we just put up, talk about sportsmanship, respecting other players, being mindful of noise. If we want to start looking into getting more specific on those types of things, then it's gonna take a lot longer to come up with signs. If I just need to get some signs made up that say, courts open from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. or whatever they are, I might be able to have something like that made up relatively quickly.
Okay.
Yeah, if we're just talking about hours, open hours, I can probably have something made up relatively quickly.
Good, yes.
So I think for short-term solution, short-term solution,
Hours.
posting hours would be a quick and easy thing that we could implement fast. I did hear from from all sides of the aisle about people weren't happy with the signage as it exists now. So the homeowners weren't happy, the pickleball players weren't happy, the paddle tennis players were unhappy. So I think we probably need a respin of what that is, and maybe that is an ad hoc subcommittee to go help staff get there if they want that. But to get that feedback, because I definitely heard complaints in earlier meetings that the community didn't feel that they were heard about what should be on that signage. So that might be an opportunity for us to allow the interested parties to be heard on the subject and get something a little more thorough, but it wouldn't be necessarily the fastest. I mean, Commissioner Peters and I turned around an ad hoc subcommittee in a month, but we worked our butts off for that, and we didn't have to interact with the public. So, I love interacting with the public, but, you know, it slows things down because there's lots of people, as we've heard tonight, who have different opinions on things about the same subject. So, and I want all those people to be heard. So, yeah, so I think that would be 2 to 3 month at least ad hoc subcommittee if we wanted to go that direction to get something that would be useful and helpful to help staff put together some new signage.
So just to be clear, so I wasn't here, but I was under the impression that the ad hoc subcommittee came up with these signs last year.
Madam Chair, you can answer that question.
I'm just asking because, again, I wasn't there, but
There
that's
was,
what I was told.
there was a lot of, sort of negotiation and inclusion of various ideas from many places for those signs, as I recall. And we came up with working with staff, with what we felt was the most direct, clear information about how to behave and what the rules were on the courts. We don't have any control over the people who don't follow the rules. I mean, we've, had this conversation before. We can only do as much as we can do what we can, and then everyone has personal responsibility for adhering to the rules and regulations. But I think, I don't know if there is anything else on that signage that's missing other than the time change. What else is missing on those signs? I'm sorry?
Amplified sound.
Sound, music.
Yeah, I think right now it just says be respectful of noise volume.
Yeah, so that's another thing.
Madam Chair, maybe it just
Yeah.
needs to be a little more direct of, instead of, hey, be good neighbors, and you could just see,
Yeah.
no amplified music. Very clear, very straightforward, no
cussing.
no fuzz on that one, right?
Yeah, no fuzz.
No cussing, be respectful. Sometimes you just have to be very direct and simplistic, because too much verbiage ends up making it so people just tune out.
Right.
So maybe get 5 top 6 rules. I don't know how many rules you would need.
That's what we were working on
And
before.
my experience, nobody reads any signs.
Yeah.
The signs are just there so that when we do enforce, we can say
Hey,
it's posted.
look at the sign.
But
Right.
typically, people don't read signs.
Okay. So, okay, all those points taken. The enforcement issue is always, still comes down to staff, still comes down to, so I don't think we can do much about that because that's considered still just following through on complaints, which we're trying to address. Another thing about a couple of these other things is that when those signs were created, it was pre-having this much input from the neighbors nearby. And so I think now that we have a much broader breadth and a depth of knowledge, I think we can make those changes. And I don't think that it requires a ad hoc subcommittee to make those changes to the signage based on what you've suggested, because I just don't want to wait that much time.
So, now that we've updated municipal code, and we did get funding this year into CIP to buy new park signage for rule signs for the new muni code, those signs will say no amplified music on them. So that sign could be added to the courts to supplement what's already there. So that way, the signs that we already have don't necessarily have to be replaced and go through that expense.
Okay.
Yeah, get the picture with the boom box and the red line through it.
We could
Because
do, I
people
mean,
don't
we
read
could
signs,
do
right?
that. We could do that too. Just, we could add something specific to that.
Lots of emojis for these things.
But the good thing about the park rule sign is it references the municipal code specifically, rather than it just being a court rule. It's actually the municipal code. So then, and that makes it easier if Park Patrol or PD have to be called.
Right.
The first thing they're going to say is, it's right here. And this is the code that we're citing you for if they needed to do that.
How many Park Patrol officers do we have?
2.
And how many Park Patrol vehicles are assigned to PRCS, do you know?
Oh, they're in the police department. They're not, or code enforcement? They're in code
Oh,
enforcement.
they're in code
Sorry.
enforcement now, okay.
Yeah, they're not in the Parks Department.
Oh, okay. All right, so it sounds like we've identified the immediate, short-term things that will at least help to mitigate some of the issues for starters. Can we have those things executed within the next 3 weeks?
Madam Chair, maybe I could
Yes.
make a motion to recommend that the park staff implement the installation of soundproofing material on the Alenda courts and post a new signage indicating the hours of 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. to be the designated play times at the Alenda courts.
I'll second that.
Okay. And Adam, do we go through the system?
Yeah.
Okay.
Give me 1 second.
And before we vote, can that motion be modified to add the sound, the music, the amplified music
Amplified music.
language?
I have a friendly amendment to your
Thank you.
motion to add the no amplified sound sign. Is that a friendly amendment?
That's a friendly.
It is a friendly amendment.
All right, he agrees it's a friendly amendment, so it can be added to the motion.
Is the second friendly
Yes,
modified?
absolutely. Second,
Okay.
totally.
All right. We're just, for people watching, we're just waiting for that to come up on our screens for voting.
Yes.
Then we'll get into a couple other things.
Yeah, I'm just
Thank you
trying to-
all for hanging long. I know we've lost some folks, but
Just trying to knock some stuff
we're
off.
trying to get through it here. Thank you.
So I have a motion by Commissioner Mohammed, seconded by Vice Chair Alexander, to approve the recommendation to staff to implement installation of soundproofing at the Alenda courts and posting new signage of hours 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. as designated time for court use and no amplified sound allowed. And you may start voting.
It's not on my screen, so I'll vote aye.
And the votes are in, and that motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. And now I'd like to address a couple of other items that have come up. One of them is the hybrid court lines striping. The prior activity by the commission did identify 1 or 2 tennis courts across the city, in the city, that were to be considered for dual striping. I don't think it's in the staff report because we didn't ever bring it back to specifically discuss. I do not think that all the tennis courts in the city should be dual striped. I don't think that that's the right thing to do. I think everybody needs to just give a little bit. And if the tennis community can acquiesce on maybe 1 or 2 of their 8 courts, and the ones that we can identify are used less than others. One of the challenges we have is that without a formal reservation system, we don't have the data. And is that accurate to say, staff, that we don't have data on every single use of every court and its type of use across the city?
Currently, right now, no.
So since that is the case, maybe an ad hoc subcommittee could be able to zero in on this point, which is how do we use the space that we already have to potentially do a small bit of restriping to accommodate more pickleball players in parks that will not have these sound issues and these issues that impact the surrounding community. I think that we have enough information with regard to the geographies of our parks and where the tennis courts are, where the basketball courts are, and to potentially identify where we could do some dual striping. That, to me, sounds like a valid ad hoc subcommittee kind of target and task. It's very specific, and it could also be identified pretty quickly because I think staff has already provided almost a lot of that information to us before. What are commissioners' thoughts on that?
So just, pardon my ignorance about it, but with, like, if you dual stripe a basketball court, are you going to, does it require a net? Because then that means if we put dual stripes on there, then we have to put nets up.
Well, there are mobile nets that are used.
So, but does that mean that then that our staff are going to have to go and put the nets up, or how are we going to? I don't know. I'm not against it. I'm just trying to think of the logistics of how we're going to make that happen. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's just how do we make it happen?
Right, the logistics. My understanding is that pickleball players who have mobile nets will just bring them across the tarmac, whatever.
Okay.
I think one of the things that actually was brought up here tonight also, though, is that there are different asphalt types for all the different sports, and not necessarily the greatest pickleball games will be played on a basketball court or on a tennis court, and that tennis shouldn't be played on certain other types of surfaces. But again, this may be something that can be addressed and with a plan that is midterm, or at least short to midterm, to address those issues. That's the way I'm seeing a potential ad hoc subcommittee. Does any other commissioners have comments? And then we'll hear from staff. Yes.
So when we did decide to not restripe, but to set up Olinda as a dual-use space, I did mention at the time that I thought it was unfair that the pickleball community, the paddle tennis community was really shouldering the entire burden of support, of accommodating pickleball, and that there should be at least one tennis court that would be, able to support. So I'm not opposed to this. It sounds like we're going to do the idea was that you tell me, but the ad hoc subcommittee would need to do some kind of survey where you're going to park out yourself outside of courts and log hours. That is not going to be something I'm going to be able to do, but.
Just a
Commissioner
quick
Peters.
comment on that. Somebody who does like survey research, we could do something much easier of random, basically like randomly send staff out at different times of day and see, and you do enough of random checks and you can see whether or not it's being used. So we could say, hey, folks at camp at Lindbergh, can you, on this day, can you check it these 3 times just to see if anybody's playing tennis? Like, all you have to do is walk over there, or, whomever. And that's a way to get that same information.
So it sounds like we're talking about valid ways for collecting data, potentially for an ad hoc subcommittee to come up with some ideas. So, putting pins in those.
So I at the last CPRS conference, I came across a company, and I've been looking into actually purchasing some counters. They're outdoor. I was thinking of getting some, and some of them are permanent that you can install on the ground, and they look like wooden posts. Like I was thinking of getting one like for the dog park, but they also have like temporary ones that can be moved around. And they're little boxes, and they just count how many people, like, so if you put it over like the doorway at a tennis court, you could see how many people walk in and out of the court.
We have
So-
those on our buses, of course.
Right, they're used in libraries to count how many people come. Because I was thinking of getting some at the buildings too, like at the senior center, and at vets, to try to get an idea of how many people are going in and out of our facilities. So
That's interesting.
yeah, sorry, I'm just kind of I'm always looking at stuff because I want
Oh,
data.
it's good stuff, data.
Well, because I
That's
want
great.
data.
We're glad you're a
It's good.
PRCS nerd.
And so, yeah, so I'm all about data, and
Oh,
so,
I love it.
yeah, and we put some money in this year's budget to get some of these things. So I could look at maybe getting some temporary ones, and we can maybe put it up at a location for a month and then move it to a different court for a month. So, it might take a little bit of time to get the data that we need, but, it could, but we also got to be careful too about where we're thinking of. I don't know that Lindbergh would be the best place to put pickleball.
No, because.
Yeah, that was my first, just because of the survey results, but when I really looked at it, I was like, no, that's way too
Just
close.
because there are some homes right there.
But again, the geographic view of where all of these courts are in each of the parks, and really trying to identify, and even if it's one, I think 1 out of 8 might be helpful to the situation. And I know there's some very strong feelings about tennis and about pickleball and paddle tennis, but I think everybody is going to need to give a little bit, whatever that is. Yes, Vice Chair Alexander.
Thank you. 2 things. The first one is a question. When you multi-stripe a court, how expensive is that, and how quickly can it be removed?
How much did we just pay to do the basketball courts? So it would probably be around 30 to 40K probably to restripe and put 4 pickleball and tennis all in one court. So it's not insignificant. And then removing it, it'd be just like doing it the first time. You got to sand it all off and then restripe it again. So
Because I'd hate for just taking that one action to stop forward progress on having separate facilities. Because I think, honestly, and I know that we're doing short, medium, and long-term solutions, but that has got to be the way to go, because a dual multi-striped court is suboptimal for, well, it sounds like what you're going to do, if I heard correctly, you want to dedicate the entire tennis court to pickleball. Is that what I'm hearing? Or is it going to be?
Again, I think this is an ad hoc subcommittee to look at the options. That's my thought, because this is where we can get into the very detail. Would it be 2 pickleball on 1 tennis court as opposed to 4? You know, I
Yes,
mean, this
because
is
I've
what.
seen 4, and I think it looks dangerous, quite frankly.
So-
I've seen it be dangerous. But
So I'd like to see if we can get a subcommittee for this particular item. Just that's the task, is identify what tennis court in the city, tennis court or courts in the city, no more than 2, could be potentially identified for dual striping based on the research that the staff has done and other data that we could obtain based on the strategies that have been put forward. That would be my proposal for a committee to handle this directly. That's the task. And the information and the plan could be turned around within 1 month.
I just want to remind you that ad hoc subcommittees cannot approve anything. It has to be, their recommendation has to be brought back to the commission.
A recommendation.
So, just so you know, the ad hoc subcommittee could not pick a tennis court. It would have to be an agendized item where you all, as a commission, would talk about it. And the ad hoc subcommittee would just bring their recommendation from the work on the ad hoc.
Of course, thank you. So there would be another step in there, which is bring it back to the commission. Okay, so our next commission meeting is August 2nd, so you guys are going to have some quick work. No.
I second your motion for an ad hoc.
I can't make the motion.
Okay, well then
so-
I'm going to motion that we create an ad hoc subcommittee to find 1 or more tennis courts that could be dual striped to make a recommendation to the commission regarding tennis courts that could be dual striped. Yeah, and maybe it could, do we need to say when it reports back? No, okay, then just an ad hoc.
You're so nice. No, you don't need to.
You don't. I was on a 5-year ad hoc subcommittee, so yeah.
Okay, all right, so there's a motion by Commissioner Peters. Is there a second? By anybody? Guess not.
Sure, I'll second it.
Oh, okay. All right. So we have a motion and a second.
Do you
We'll
want to
see how
go
this
ahead
vote
and,
goes.
do you want to go ahead and appoint 2 people to that subcommittee in this same?
I'd like to see if we're getting one first. If you don't mind, and then we'll see what happens next.
Okay. So I have a motion by Commissioner Peters, seconded by Commissioner Mohammed, to approve the formation of an ad hoc subcommittee to identify 1 to 2 tennis courts in Culver City to dual stripe use.
Just thank you, and just as an aside, that subcommittee might determine that none of them would be appropriate. I mean, there's that option, there's that possibility, just saying. But I think we need to look at it. Anyway,
Okay, and you may start voting.
okay. I don't have that on my screen, Adam, so I'm voting yes in favor. Aye.
Can you go find out what's going on with And the votes are in. And that motion passes with 3 yes and 2 no. The noes are Vice Chair Alexander and Commissioner Bond.
Okay, thank you. So, with that vote, we can identify 2 people to be on that ad hoc subcommittee. And I would like to know if either of the members who voted no on having an ad hoc subcommittee would be willing to be on that ad hoc subcommittee, considering the nature of the content.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, I don't speak for.
Yeah, no, I would be willing to do it.
Okay, so so both of you would be interested in being on it, or who? I'm sorry, I missed it.
I was just saying I would be willing to. I would.
Yeah, I'm saying,
I love our commission.
I mean, I would be willing to, because I would like to get to know the parks better and to see where everything is located. And I
Okay.
think that this could potentially be a good way for me to do that.
Okay. Commissioner Peters, you were also interested in taking that on?
Sure.
Okay.
I think her statistical expertise would be key.
She does have statistical expertise.
Thanks for that. Yes, no, I'd be honored.
Okay. Does anybody else want to be considered for that subcommittee? Vice Chair Alexander?
Well, I said yes before.
Oh, okay. Well,
I'm sorry.
I got lost over here. Okay.
I said yes, I would like to be considered on the subcommittee.
Okay. All right, so we have 3 people interested. We have 2 positions available. What is the best way to go about identifying this? Do we just, Palvi Mohammed, do you have
I
any?
would nominate Commissioner Braun and
Bond.
Bond, sorry,
That's okay.
and Commissioner Peters to be assigned to this ad hoc subcommittee. I so move.
Okay.
I will
So-
second that motion.
So I have a motion by Commissioner Mohammed, seconded by Commissioner Peters, to approve the appointment of Commissioner Bond and Commissioner Peters to the newly formed ad hoc subcommittee, dual striped tennis courts.
It's gone dark a couple of times.
And you may start voting.
Just keep hitting this and it keeps coming up like this. This keeps coming up like that. Okay, don't leave. Stay here. So are you waiting for my verbal vote?
For your verbal vote.
Okay, I'll vote aye.
And the votes are in, and that passes unanimously.
I'm almost done. Anyway, thank you. Okay, thank you all for your comments and service and opportunity for service on that. And look forward to getting that information back. Okay. The only other thing that's hanging out there for me is, or from the way I see it, is the registration system and a pay-to-play also have come up. I don't know that that's something that staff is really able to tackle right now. I think that those are, I really don't want to go into those particular options at this time, but what do some of the commissioners have to say?
So obviously, a lot of the other items we've talked about are still in exploratory mode, so I would just I would be in favor of making a motion to just throw our support behind some of the explorations that are being done right now. For instance, the monitoring and registration that the director mentioned that he was looking into. Also looking into expanded use of CCUSD facilities through the joint use agreement, continue to promote that. And then also working with Metro in an attempt to create some pickleball courts underneath the expo line. And also explore purchasing and installing counters so that we can get some more data. Those are the things that I would say we can, that I would make a motion to encourage or recommend that the staff continue to explore and come back at a later date with a report on their findings from using that.
Those strategies.
Through the chair?
Yes.
Would you take a friendly amendment and?
Sure.
And actually picking a date when that would come back to us?
Yeah, I like date certain. Yeah, I think we would need to give some time, so maybe September or October, I think would be for these kind of more, unless they have something earlier, but I'm sure some of these are going to take a little time to do some exploration, especially like trying to get some traction with Metro will probably take a little time.
Yes, I think the one item in there with respect to joint use agreement with the school district may be somewhere in an intermediary time, but I believe the director probably will keep it surprised as he's allowed to with respect to what's going on there.
Maybe we could just say bring it back in the third quarter calendar year of this year. That way we give a little leeway of when that can happen. Uh-oh, counting months now.
Well,
Is July through
Yeah,
September, yeah? and
Yeah.
then That's the third quarter.
yeah.
Yeah,
so they've
All right,
got September.
September.
That's a month, technically, our September meet, because we're at the end of July.
Right.
We have one meeting in
October.
August, and then September, it's only really about a month.
All
So
right.
it would
I
have
think,
to be
yeah.
October.
Maybe by,
October is when we have, is that the budget discussion one, or is that September? I forget.
talking about what we wanted to put in the budget for next year.
Just so you know, for your November meeting, you all canceled the regular meeting and you scheduled a special meeting near the end of the month. And right now, the item you focus that special meeting on is on plunge rules and regulations.
Okay.
And that's November 21st, correct?
Correct. You can add
so
something
I-
else to that, but typically, special meetings are devoted to a single topic.
Well, then maybe let's go with October and whatever you
See
got
how you do.
at that time, and then we can bring it back if we need to.
Then, with that friendly amendment, I'll second your motion.
Can you say the motion one more time?
Let's see, the motion would be to recommend to staff that they continue exploring the monitoring and the registration for court use. Consider also continue discussions with CCUSD for the joint use agreement in order to make court space available to the public. Continue to work with Metro to explore installation of pickleball courts beneath the expo line in Culver City. And look into the purchase and installation of counters for use of data collection at our courts.
Should we also include some reference to Parks Master Plan to make sure that that's supposed to be looking at everything? So if there's any speck of, I know you're looking into it, Director, but if there's any speck of dirt anywhere in the parks where we could possibly.
They're already doing that.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Thank you.
The first part was recommended staff to continue monitoring courts and consideration of registration.
Not to explore, to look into what it would take to, monitor courts and implement a registration system. that was mentioned by the director that he knew of a agency that, or an organization that might be able to provide those services for a fee, of course.
I know with registration system, the city has one, but maybe that
Yeah.
wouldn't be the best one.
Don't know.
We don't know. That's why it's
why
being
I'm-
explored.
That's right.
What else?
Okay, so I have a motion by Commissioner Mohammed, seconded by Vice Chair Alexander, to approve a recommendation to staff to explore monitoring courts and implement a registration system, continue discussion with CCFD to make court space available, continue to work with Metro to install pickleball courts under the expo line, and look into the purchase of counters for data collection. And you may vote.
I vote aye.
I also vote, oh, no, here we go. Mine was a little slow.
You're just jealous that you can't say aye.
And the votes are in, and that passes unanimously.
Excellent. Great. Did we miss anything that needs additional addressing at this point? I think we've covered a tremendous amount of ground, and I think that with the input and patience of the community and staff, we've come to some good resolutions here, short and somewhat short, medium, and really looking forward to the long-term options there at Bots and other places. But thank you very much, Director Stevens and staff, for looking into all of these things. I mean, it's just your expertise and your history at Long Beach has been really, really helpful too, because you've been through a lot of this already. And thank you for, embracing the Culver City community as you have and looking into our own spaces and our own landscape. And all the things that you're doing. So thank you very much. Really appreciate it. So I think we've probably come to the end of this item. Is there anything further that any commissioners wanted to say or share with regard to this process this evening? No.
I would just say that I thank the remaining members of the audience and also the ones that were here before, and also staff, thank you. This has been the most difficult item that's been on the agenda since I've been on here. And so I also thank for the patience that the commission has shown to all the stakeholders, because there's a lot. And I don't think that, it's not over the goal line yet. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done, but I think that I would hope that the members of the community could at least walk away from this meeting saying that the commission is moving forward on many of these items.
Thank you. Yes. And just one final comment. When we were looking for space for community gardens, we looked at a lot of different open space, not in the parks as well. So if staff wants to resurrect any of that information, we all have that, and we can, add that to the list of the things that we're looking for as we're all biking, walking, driving, and taking transit through our city.
There was one item that I did fail to mention, which is, we were talking about, since we obviously have a relationship with the CCUSD and the joint use agreement, I was thinking about this the other day when I was doing Park to Playa, and then I went all the way over to West LA College. There is so much wasted space up there. So if there are relationships that can be forged to sort of, use that as an opportunity with them down the road, I'd like to put a pin in that as well.
Thank you. Yes, there is space. There are spaces. And we just are working on getting toward them. So, thank you. Okay, so let's see where I'm at now. I'll use my paper. Action, items not on the agenda, correct. Is there any public comment for items not on the agenda?
Yes, you have one.
Oh, yes, that's right. Ms. Neal, who has been very patient listening to all of this. But I know you soak it all in. Okay, thank you.
Denise Neal again. You've given me so much more food for thought, in addition to what I already wanted to bring, but I'm going to try to be really succinct. I see my 3 minutes is dwindling down. I'd like to know, Commission, if you could please provide us an update on the Parks and Recs, Bottsfield and Veterans Park plans in anticipation of the 2028 Olympics, but even earlier, the FIFA World Cup and things. I have a litany of things on this list, but I'm probably not going to have time to mention them all. I'll be quick as I can. I'd like to know if we're going to have ongoing community meetings regarding proposed usage of space. I need to know what's happening with the performance venues, both the 500 and 5,000 seat ones at both parks. I'd like to know how we're handling vendor space at the parks for small and micro business vendors and licensing and things and rules. I'd like to know how permits will be worked. I'd also like to know about restoration of Olympic training sites, like we used to use the pool, we used to have a skating venue, and just even for FIFA to level out bots and monetize the use of a temporary soccer field, you know, just to help us fill our coffers while we're trying to anticipate and buckle up against this upcoming fiscal deficit that we're looking at happening in a couple of years. We need to start trying to figure out how to monetize FIFA World Cup 2026, NBA All-Stars 2026, Super Bowl 2027, the Paralympics and the Olympics 2028. So we can create a buffer and have all hands on deck with our creative community, our culinary, everybody, because we don't have a lot of real estate here for the sports. But I'd like to know how Parks and Rec will strategically prepare, because there's a global strategist waiting to help us do this in a 2-year window to prepare and to help economic development, create that buffer and, you know, stack our funds. With that being said, I'd also like to know if you're handling Fiesta La Bayona, and there are some questions I have about artists providing music for the beer garden. I don't know if Culver Exchange Club does that, or if Parks and Rec decides. And I'd also like to know if good water can be brought to Fox Hills Park, a better soccer venue can be brought to Fox Hills Park. I'd like to know if a bus stop can be put in the cul-de-sac at the Vets cul-de-sac near the play area of the park. And I'd like to know if we can have the walkable butterfly gardens and edible gardens at the parks and work with Culver Garden Society to do it.
Thank you.
This is so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'll share more later.
And as you know, we can't, we don't have crosstalk for public comment, but
Yes,
thank you for your questions.
Okay, hopefully we can work on answers. Thank you.
Okay.
That was your last comment.
Okay. Items from members or staff and staff? Let's start with members. Okay. Does anybody have, any commissioners have anything to share?
I do.
Yes.
I have a concern. This should come as no surprise. It's about the plunge. And the staffing, which I know that Director Stevens, you have been struggling with. And I guess it's how to deal with that, because we already know July 27th, that due to the staffing shortage, the plunge is going to be closed at 10 a.m. That is a Saturday, which should be a very high use day, especially during the summer. And we've had a number of these closures throughout the summer from the issue with staffing. And I know that we're going to be addressing the plunge in November, but summer is a high peak usage, especially for families. And I'm not really sure how we're going to address this, but the summer's coming to a close, but I want to make sure, and I'm sure you do too, that the plunge is available for the kids. A lot of people or a lot of kids are not learning how to swim, and they're not safe around the water. And the accidental death rate it's like the number 4 accidental death rate for kids in the United States. And so this is
Number 1 for 0 to 4-year-olds.
Yeah.
It's number 2 for 4 to 18-year-olds.
Yeah, so I'm just saying that it's a serious issue that we're facing here. And I don't know if there's anything, I don't know if this is appropriate, if there's anything the commission can do. Is there anything that can be done to help with this issue?
I can say I was actually talking to our supervisor that oversees the pool earlier today, and we were talking about strategies to try to address this. And we tried some strategies in Long Beach that worked, and so maybe we can implement some of those here.
Because what I'd like to say, and I know things are different since COVID started, but I know that prior to a certain manager coming on, the plunge was very much like a community and a family. And a lot of that changed once this particular manager came in. And the atmosphere at the plunge, it went from that family community to not being very welcoming. And I think, and we started having more staff issues once that happened. So hopefully what you were talking about, what you've done with Long Beach can be brought to Culver City. So
I'm certainly hopeful, and just in general, we added another. So we have a full-time coordinator there, who's new, who's been there quite a while. I don't know if you're familiar with Graciela, but she's now the coordinator that oversees the pool directly. We've just recently are bringing on a new senior pool manager. That's going to be full-time. I think he takes effect next week, I think is what I was told. So we'll have 2 full-time people overseeing the pool. And then we're in the process of hiring some more pool managers. We have some more lifeguards that are coming on board, hopefully next week. We thought they were going to start last week, but it looks like it might be next week now. We have 3 new lifeguards coming. But we're looking at ways to try to recruit. It's very difficult. You can't just hire anybody. There's a very strenuous physical aspect, and there's also the educational aspect. You're looking at like 90 hours of certifications to be a lifeguard. It requires a certain level of individual with some abilities, so it makes it difficult. But it can be done.
I was the lifeguard at one point, so I'm well aware. Thank you.
Well, but the other 4 might not be.
No, me too. I gotcha.
I was also a lifeguard at one point, so.
You have 3 potential.
I just watched them on TV.
And I know this isn't an agendized item, so we can't go into too much depth. And in November, we'll really dig into some of the plunge adventures. But there's a nationwide shortage of lifeguards, to the point where I mean, even at the Y and everywhere. And I was actually thinking about going back and getting my WSI and saying, whoops, I'll do it.
You're hired.
I'll do it, no problem. I'm good at telling people what they can't do. But yeah, so, oh, thank you. I got very, very animated there, losing my pen. Thank you. Anything else from members? I think we've covered a lot. Is there anything from staff? Oh, yes.
And more happy news, I still think camp is going great. And just reporting that it seems like it's still a lot of fun. There's a lot of fun excursions. They've been having a great time. You guys are doing a great job. And my daughter's even like, I can't wait till I can do teen camp.
Yeah.
So even that's cool.
Oh, I actually thought of an item. Thank you, Director. I'm very excited to go back. I'll make sure that it actually is going to be open, but to tell Blair Hills that the basketball court's open, they'll be really happy.
Oh, yay.
Yes, because I had told them that they were, I said, soft date, but end of July, so made that. That's going to be great.
Great, thank you. And just to remind people, this month is Parks Make Life Better, ! month. So there are movies in the park. There are all kinds of great activities that are going on. So go to the PRCS website and also like them and follow them on Instagram. I think it's PRCS Culver City, is the Instagram handle. And go out and have some fun. So are there any items from staff that you'd like to bring up tonight?
I don't think we have anything. I will say I was really excited. I don't want to take up more time, but we had our first Sensory Saturday event, which was the brainchild of one of our coordinators, Megan Stebbings. And I think we had over 50 or so kids come throughout. They ended up extending it like 1 or 2 hours because they just had so many kids there having a great time. So it was at Culver West, I think. Yeah, we got one more, I think, coming up in 2 weeks. Yeah.
Wonderful.
So it was great. New program, just amazing.
Wonderful. And park plan pop-ups continue as well. I believe there's one at Senior Center tomorrow, 10 to 12?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and they were at the Fox Hills movie in the park on Saturday, which was well attended, and they got a lot of feedback.
Excellent.
And they did the day camps. They did all the day camps, so that was really cool. We'll have to, maybe when we do the day camp update, we'll bring some photos. Well, I'm sure they'll talk about it when they give you an update.
Okay.
And there's tomorrow.
Correct. It's tomorrow at noon, a lunchtime update that is a virtual meeting for the community where our consultant will give an update of where they are on the process.
Oh, okay.
It's a virtual meeting.
I had the Senior Center from 10 to 12.
And then they
at
are
12.
going right into the virtual meeting.
Oh, okay, that's great. Okay, thank you. Now, see, everybody who's listening and here, aren't you glad that you're here to know all these things going on? Okay, so I think we are ready to adjourn. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I have a motion by Commissioner Peters, seconded by Commissioner Mohammed to adjourn.
That one was fast.
And you may start voting.
I think I'll vote yes.
I vote a yes.
And the votes are in, and we are adjourned at 10:15 p.m.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much.